Hey guys. You are watching your anime world. How are you all? Please support to subscribe this channel for watching new interesting stories. So in this video, we will see what if blind Deku discovered a hidden magnetism quirk. Here is short summary. After an accident at the creek left Izuku blind, he thought his dreams of being a hero were over. It wasn't until his long missing father returned that something stirred inside him, and his quirk awakened. Now, with a long road to recovery and understanding his quirk, Izuku Midoriya will not stop working hard to realize his dream of becoming a hero. But before we start, if you want more stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe and like this video. And if possible, share this video with your friends. Now let's start the story. That day by the river was when everything changed. A simple gesture of concern was met with anger. For over a year, Katsuki Bakugo heard that he had a quirk. For over 2 years, there was nothing. It just irritated him. He didn't know why at the time. He wouldn't for years later, but when he slipped and fell off the log into the river below, the laughter of those damn extras and that stupid smile looked down at him. His anger just exploded, and then he exploded, smacking his hand away. As he got to his feet, he felt him help him, and out of irritation, he swung his hand backward. He meant to knock Deku away, but his explosion went off. Then Deku screamed, and everything froze. He turned, and Deku was lying in the river screaming, holding his eyes. "Oh God, Izuku," he cried. He hadn't used his name in over a year. It had been Deku this, Deku that, useless. That was all he was to him. Useless to Katsuki's goal of becoming the strongest and the greatest hero of all time. "Get some help," he yelled at the stupid extras who were staring. Deku kept screaming, holding his face. He rolled onto his knees, and Katsuki could hear him saying it burned, that it was burning. He helped him splash water on his face, desperately trying to do something. Katsuki could see the skin bubbling. It was blackened and singed. The stupid extras ran off. He hoped to get help. Deku kept telling him how much it hurt, how the tears hurt. They kept splashing the cold water from the river, hoping it would extinguish whatever fire was burning him. It seemed like forever until an adult arrived. They immediately ran down to Izuku, pulled out their phone, and called emergency services. It was a blur as the adult ensured Katsuki was all right, picked up Izuku, and ran out of the woods towards the emergency services. Katsuki ran after, but all he could think of was him screaming, the smell of burning flesh, and watching the skin bubble. He watched as he was loaded into the ambulance. The EMT approached him, trying to get some information about Izuku. He answered the EMT's questions the best he could. It wasn't long before the police arrived, and a local hero, Prism. She approached Katsuki and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Hi there," the hero said calmly. "What is your name?" Katsuki's tongue felt numb. He was having difficulty talking. He looked over at the extras. They were talking to the police and pointing in his direction. He started to shake as fear settled into him for the first time. "Hey, it will be all right. I know this is scary," Prism said. "But right now, I need to know your name so we can call your parents. Can you do that? Can you give me your name?" Katsuki Bakugo, he managed. "Good Katsuki, this is my sidekick, Lasso. Can you give him your phone number so we can call home?" Katsuki nodded and recited the number to the hero, who returned the call. Prism noticed that Katsuki started to shake some. He knew his mom, dad and Auntie Inko would be mad, so all he could do was hope that Izuku was all right and that maybe it wasn't so bad. "Are you okay, Katsuki?" Prism knelt in front of the boy. "Do your parents hurt you?" Katsuki said, "No, but they will be mad." "Why are they going mad, sweetie?" Prism said. "I hurt Izuku," he said. "It was an accident. I slipped and fell, and he tried to help, but I was mad and swiped at him, and my quirk went off." He started to scream, and his breathing quickened as the smell of burning flesh assaulted his nose, and the sight of the skin blackened and bubbling. "Okay, Katsuki, that is a horrible accident, but it was an accident, right?" Katsuki nodded. "What is your quirk?" "Explosion," Katsuki said, falling to his butt, putting his head between his knees. Lasso came over and whispered something to Prism, who nodded. "Okay, Katsuki, your mom is coming right now. When she gets here, we will let her talk to you, but then I need to talk to her as well." Katsuki nodded. Inko was changing in the hospital's locker room. She was already running late. Her 10-hour shift had ballooned to 16 hours, then to 18. The life of an emergency room doctor was always challenging. She was concerned when she hadn't received a message from her neighbor that Izuku was home. He should have been home by now unless he stopped at the park again. Inko had just gotten out of her scrubs when the door burst open, and Dr. Dayspring came rushing in. "Inko!" she yelled. Inko jumped some and stared at her friend. "It's Izuku. He has been hurt, he is en route right now." Inko froze for 1 second before grabbing fresh scrubs. "What happened?" "Report is there is damage to his face, specifically the eyes. Dr. Hagakure has been paged, also reports of burns." Dr. Dayspring responded, handing Inko her coat as the two women ran out of the locker room. "I already pulled his file," her friend said as they rushed to the emergency bay. Inko was pacing, waiting. "Inko, you cannot be the lead on this." Inko turned and nodded. The ambulance pulled up, and when the back doors opened, she could see Izuku had burned bandages over his eyes. She could see the black marks peeking out around the edges and the distinct smell of burnt flesh. Inko pushed back the tears, shut down mom mode, and went into doctor mode. 6-year-old male, explosive burns to the face, BP 140/97, the EMT called out, as Izuku was saying that his face burned and crying. Inko grabbed his hand. "I am here, baby. Mommy is right here." "Mommy. It hurts mommy. It hurts so bad. It will be okay," Inko said as they rushed Izuku into the emergency ward. Everything was not okay. -15 hours later Inko had slept, if you could call it that. It was a light doze. She couldn't sleep knowing he was in surgery. Dr. Hagakure was the best optical surgeon. She knew he was in capable hands, and she would be in the way. Besides, hospital rules wouldn't allow her in the operating room. It was the most excruciating wait of her life. She had called her husband, but he had yet to call her back. She was furious with him, but she would address that later. She was on her umpteenth cup of coffee when the light went from red to green. She held her breath as Dr. Hagakure and Dayspring walked out. She looked to her friend Dr. Dayspring. The blonde girl gave her a weak smile that told Inko that at least he was still breathing. Dr. Hagakure walked over, removing her surgical cap, her pink hair tumbling free. Inko could see the look in her teal eyes that things had not gone great. "Have a seat, Inko." Inko started to protest. "Inko, sit, please," she repeated a little more forcibly. Inko sat down as the two women sat next to her. "Inko, there is no easy way to say this, but Izuku is blind." She took Inko's hand. "The optic nerves were destroyed, and his corneas and irises were gone. I was able to save the optic sac so that he has something there, but there was nothing I could do to save his vision." Inko's eyes began to water. The damage traveled up his optic nerve to his brain. There has been some damage done to his visual cortex, and there is evidence of a concussion as well as swelling and cerebral bleeding. We were able to get the bleeding under control and the swelling as well. I was able to trigger some repair of the cortex, Sinedra Dayspring said. As the brain matter has not yet died, we hope to keep saving most of it. With it being regrown from scratch, it may mutate with the lack of visual impulse. Now, that is my hope. He will have a hard road ahead. We won't know more until the swelling subsides and we can see the effects. Inko started to cry. She knew she had to let it out before she saw him. She needed to be strong for him. He would have enough problems. Once she composed herself, Dr. Hagakure hugged her. "Thank you, Dr. Hagakure, for everything you did." "Call me Hotaru," she replied. "I will follow up in the morning to see if we need to do another survey." "Of course, he will have to stay in the ICU." Inko nodded. "Thank you, Hotaru," Inko said, wiping her eyes. Hotaru nodded and squeezed her hand before leaving. "Go see Izuku," Sinedra said. "I will wait here to drive you home." Inko once again started to protest. "Inko, you have been here for 30 hours. It would be best if you had sleep. It is going to be a long enough road." Inko nodded and walked into the recovery room. He was lying on the bed with his head shaved. White gauze covered his eyes. She could still see the black peeking out, but at least the smell of burning flesh was gone. She gently took his hand and rubbed her cheek against it. He squeezed her hand in his sleep. He squeezed it and didn't let go. Bakugo Mitsuki and Katsuki went to the hospital the next day. As they sat in the waiting area, Inko came walking out and glared at the little boy. Mitsuki got to her feet quickly and walked over. Inko, is little Izuku going to be all right? No, Mitsuki, he isn't, Inko said, her fist trembling. You must leave now. I can't handle talking to you. Take your son, and please leave. I am sorry, Auntie Inko, Katsuki said as he walked up. Sorry isn't good enough, Katsuki, Inko said rather harshly, causing the Katsuki to flinch. Izuku will never see again. He will never see the sunrise or the stars. He will never see the person he falls in love with. No more movies, no more cartoons, no more manga or anything. All because you can't control yourself. Every day you open your eyes, remember that. Please leave, Inko said as she turned and walked away. Wisely, Mitsuki kept her mouth shut. Darkness. Izuku awoke, but everything was dark. He couldn't see. He knew the smell of the hospital. He was very familiar with it. He touched his face and winced, feeling the gauze. He began to feel around the bed in a slight panic and heard the door open. It's okay, Izuku, it's Nurse Kato, the person said. Izuku turned to the voice. He knew her. Nurse Kato was a sweet older lady who worked with his mom a lot. She would sneak him candies when his mom wasn't looking. Mrs. Kato, I can't see, he whimpered. I know, sweetie, I know. Your mom will be here in a minute. I called her when you were awake, Nurse Kato replied. Izuku could hear the sympathy in her voice. He knew something was wrong. Mrs. Kato, can I have a candy? Not right now, but I promise I will give you one as soon as you eat some real food, she replied, squeezing his hand. My head hurts, as do my eyes, Izuku said. I will let the doctor know, baby. I promise. Can you be strong for me? Just for a little bit? She said softly, and Izuku nodded slightly. He could feel her when she entered the room. He knew it was his mom. Mom? He said. It's me, baby, she said, coming over to hold his hand. Mom, why can't I see? He said. Everything is dark. Do you remember what happened? She replied. Katsuki fell. I wanted to check on him, but he got mad. When I went to help him, she could see him struggling to remember. It is okay, Izuku, Inko said. When you went to help him, his quirk went off. It triggered right in front of your face, right before your eyes. Am I blind? He said, his lip quivering. Yes, you are, baby, she responded. But it's going to be okay. We will learn how to adapt. But if I am blind, I can't be a hero when my quirk comes in, he said, wincing as the tears stung. Ow, my tears hurt. Inko saw him teetering on a cliff. She knew it might be a lie, but she knew that a parent has to lie sometimes. Maybe you will adapt. The body is a strange thing. Maybe when your quirk comes in, it will help you navigate. We still don't know your quirk, so don't give up hope. I know you can do anything you put your mind to. He sniffled some and opened his arms. I need a hug first. She did her best not to squeeze him too tight or to cry. Also, my head hurts. We will get you some medicine, she whispered. Does this mean I can have a dog now? He replied. She wanted to laugh. He had been bugging for a dog for years. We will see, she said. No, I can't see, remember, he said, holding her tight. She could feel him wincing in pain. She knew he was crying, but he was trying to make her feel better. You are going to be a great hero, my baby, simply great, she said, as her tears leaked out some. Is Dad coming to see me? He asked hopefully. No, Izuku. He says he is too busy with work, but he knows you will get better, Inko said. She might as well have hit him with a bat as he had just shrunk in on himself. Why doesn't he love us? Izuku said, wincing as the tears kept coming. He never comes home. He just sends a card on my birthday. I don't remember his appearance and will never see him again. It's not fair. His voice started to get louder. It's not fair, it's not fair. He slammed his fists on the bed, causing the entire bed to shake. Inko wrapped her arms around him. No baby, it isn't fair. It was all she could say as she comforted him till the doctors started to come in. It was going to be a long road ahead. It was a very long road, but she would deal with Hisashi. Mexico City, sir, your wife has filed for divorce, his assistant said. Hisashi sighed. He knew it was coming. Especially after Izuku's accident, he had the best doctors he could find reviewing the case, but he knew that he couldn't explain that to his wife or his son. He was supposed to be there. He wanted to be there, but other things took priority. Things he couldn't share with them or explain. They all told him it was a mistake to get married, that this life couldn't mix with that life. Keep it casual, but he had fallen in love with Inko. It was a lousy idea mentally, but his heart kept telling him he could make it work. He could make this work so he wouldn't go home to a bare house when the job was finally done. Maybe she would be there with his son. His son who was in pain, who had been crippled, who he hadn't seen him in years and now would never see him again. Agree to her demands, double the alimony, set up a trust for Izuku, make him my sole beneficiary, he rubbed his face, give her the house. Sir, just do it. He cut the line and turned back to the mirror. He closed his eyes and allowed himself to grieve for 1 minute. Then he turned that grief into anger. These monsters that he had been chasing around the entire globe were about to have a very bad day. They were going either to give him the information he had been chasing on this Demon King, or they were going to blow away as ash on the wind. The long road. Do you see any change, Izuku? Dr. Hagakure asked. Nope, all dark still, Izuku replied. Well, that was to be expected. She patted his leg. According to the scans, the visual cortex is regenerating nicely, all the bleeding has stopped, and the swelling is almost gone. We are going to get you started with physical and occupational therapy. Can I get a seeing eye dog? He said hopefully. I will see what I can do, she whispered. Dr. Dayspring is going to come in now and check your burns. I will be back to check on you tomorrow. Thank you, doctor, he said. His burns were healing very nicely, thanks to her regenerative trigger. He sighed and leaned back in the darkness after she left. A long road, he sighed. The passage of time bothered him a lot. He didn't know what time it was or whether it was daytime or nighttime. His mom had bought him a watch that he could hit, and it would tell him the time. That had helped a lot. Therapy was long and hard. The sensation of walking without being able to see was terrible, and then he had to incorporate the cane and start to learn Braille. Eating was frustrating, and that part made him want to scream. He would occasionally have a breakdown, as he was not only frustrated but also overwhelmed and angry. He was counting steps to the bathroom, getting it wrong and having an accident, trying to find the toilet and having an accident. He hated having to call for a nurse or have someone escort him, even if it was his mom. She had just started letting him cut his steak, and now that was out of the question. He had to be fed like a child unless it was a sandwich, but if he put it down, that had ended up on the floor. Apple juice on the floor. Tea in his lap. He was feeling down when he heard the door open. He looked toward the sound, but nothing was said. Who's there? He said, with a slight panic. The hospital staff would not only knock before entering but also announce themselves. Nobody, a girl's voice answered, followed by a giggle. Are you supposed to be in here? He couldn't help but smile at the playfulness. Maybe I am a ghost, she said, trying to make her voice spooky. Does that make you afraid? Not really, I can't see you, so to be honest, everything is kind of scary, he responded. That's right, because I am invisible. He heard the giggle again. He tried to follow the voice. No, it's because I am blind, he responded. Oh, sorry, he heard her say. Wait, are you invisible? He said, trying to sit up. Yeah, she responded. Can you make yourself visible? No, I haven't figured it out yet, but I am sure I will. The girl said. You weren't born blind, is that part of your quirk? No, there was an accident, Izuku said. I don't know my quirk. They say I have one, but I still haven't figured it out. Well, I hope you do, and I hope it is super awesome, the girl said with such exuberance that Izuku couldn't help but smile. I hope you can be visible, he replied. Hey, can I hear you again sometime? I like that. I see what you did there, the girl laughed. Sure, I don't know when I will return, but I will stop and see you next time. Not if I see you first, he replied, adding finger guns. Over more, she said. He moved his guns to the right. There you go. The door opened, and she was gone, just like a ghost. Later, did you know the hospital is haunted? Izuku told his mother, who smiled gently at her dear boy. No, I didn't, she replied, wiping his chest with a damp towel. Arm up, she ordered. Yeah, but she is a friendly ghost, he responded, giggling when his mom ran the cloth under his armpit. How do you know it's a girl ghost? Inko responded, going over the ticklish part a few more times to ensure it was clean. Once Izuku caught his breath, he said, she sounded like a girl. But you know what? I don't know. There was that girl I met at the clinic, but she looked like a guy. She was very nice and didn't get mad when I made that mistake. Yes, Hikiishi can be very nice, Inko responded. A long road sure enough, the ghost returned to visit. Izuku always knew by the door opening. If the door opened, someone was coming in, and hospital staff would always announce themselves. So it wasn't difficult for him to know when it was her. She giggled a lot. He verbally confirmed that she was, in fact, a girl. She was curious about why he was unsure, but she seemed to understand after his story. On his third visit from the giggling ghost, he discovered her mother was a doctor at the hospital. She was one of Izuku's doctors, Dr. Hagakure. Izuku began to look forward to her visits. It was sunshine in his dark world. They would tell each other bad jokes, and she would make him laugh. Inko was busy working and trying to be there for her son as he struggled to learn a new way to live. All the rehab was enough to drive her insane nearly, and she wasn't the one going through it, on top of her job as an emergency room doctor. For the past 2 months, she had lived at the hospital. She was surprised and hurt when, after sending the divorce papers to her husband, he signed them without protest. It is not even a phone call of empty promises to try and work things out or improve them. Then there was the Bakugos. Legal responsibility for Izuku's accident had fallen upon the family after an investigation, though it was an accident their son had crippled her son. What made things complicated was that Izuku had asked about Katsuki, wondering why he hadn't come to visit him. She stared at her phone for a while before she called. Hello, Inko, Mitsuki rang out loud and clear. Hello, Mitsuki, Inko responded. I would like to sit down with you and Katsuki. Izuku has been asking about him. I understand. Where would you like to meet? There is a cafe across from the hospital, Inko said, looking at her calendar. How about Saturday at 11 a.m.? We will be there, Mitsuki responded, and the phone call ended. Mitsuki set the phone down and leaned back in her chair, staring at the is going to be a long road, she thought. Saturday Katsuki had been in a funk since the accident. That wasn't the right word, he had been in the grips of depression. As nightmares had plagued him nightly, Izuku's screams and the smell of burning flesh tormented him. The worst was that he woke up, and they didn't stop. The once vaunted quirk he had been so proud of now terrified him. He had to stop using it altogether. They had been forced to change schools after the accident as the other parents had submitted a request for them to do so as they did not feel their children would be safe. He had welcomed the change of schools, not to get away from the stairs but not to have to look at that empty desk anymore. Or see the drawings on the walls. When his mom told him about the meeting, he wondered if Auntie would yell at him again. He deserved to be yelled at. But he wanted to see Izuku, even if it was one more time. He had to tell him how sorry he was. The Bakugos arrived early only to find Inko seated on the outside patio, drinking coffee. They made their way over to her and took the chairs opposite. Can I say something? Katsuki said immediately as they took their seats. Inko was slightly surprised, but she just nodded for the boy to continue. I am so sorry, Auntie. Sorry is not a good enough word, but I am sorry. Even if you tell me I can never talk to him again, I want to talk to him one more time to tell him that. Katsuki wiped away a tear. I don't want him to forgive me. I just need him to know. You are right. Saying you are sorry is not good enough, Inko replied. She noticed how Katsuki flinched. What you did, accident or not, has robbed my son of sight. For the rest of his life, he will never be able to see all the wonders and joys this world offers. But you can prove it. Katsuki's head lifted. Not with words but with actions. Every day from now on, you prove that you are a better person than that day in the river, that every day you prove that what happened that day changed not only Izuku's life but yours as well. Inko stared at the young boy for a moment. He has been asking about you. He wants to know why you haven't come to see him. After we talk here, I will take you to see him, and we can see where we go from there. Inko drank her coffee and turned her attention to Mitsuki. The same goes for you, Mitsuki. I am not going to try and ruin you or Masaru. I will let the lawyers settle things. That is all I can offer. I understand, Inko, and thank you for that. Mitsuki bowed her head. That is more generous than I could have ever dreamed of. Now, if you like, can we order some food, or can I take you to see him? Inko said. I would like to see him first, Katsuki replied. I am not hungry. Inko paid her tab and led them across the street, into the hospital, and to her son's room. When they opened the door, Katsuki took a deep breath. He winced and felt like running when he saw his eyes still wrapped in bandages. They saw him sit up. Honey, it's me, and I brought some visitors, Inko said. Hey, brat, Mitsuki said softly. Hi, Izuku, Katsuki almost whispered. Auntie, Kachan, Izuku said excitedly. Katsuki flinched at hearing him say his nickname. Are you okay, Kachan? I am sorry I hurt you, Izuku, he replied as he started moving to Izuku's bedside. Katsuki hadn't even realized he was moving forward. Izuku opened his mouth but then stopped. I am sorry that it happened to Kachan, Izuku said, looking down at his hands. I am mad at you. Katsuki halted his approach. I just wanted us to keep being friends and heroes together, but you were so mean when my quirk still hadn't come in. They saw his shoulders shudder as he started crying. You called me Deku. That hurt. I wasn't useless, and now, he touched his bandaged eyes. I was stupid, Izuku, Katsuki said, holding his hands to his chest. I was stupid and dumb, and I don't know why I acted that way. I won't ever use my quirk again. I am just so sorry. No, Izuku yelled, startling them. You have to be a hero now. But, he protested. I don't know if I get to be a hero now, Izuku said. And if I can't be a hero, then you have to be one for me. And not just a hero who wants to beat people up constantly, but a real hero like All Might. Like we used to talk about, you must do that for both of us. Izuku held out his hand. Then all this will be for nothing, and I don't want this to be for nothing. Then you have to be a hero with me. Katsuki ran forward and grabbed his hand. I will do everything I can to be a hero, but I want you with me. I know I did wrong, but I can do it if you are there to help me. I will always do my best to help you, Izuku said. The two children hugged while the parents looked on. It is amazing children's capacity for forgiveness, Inko said. It is something that gets lost as we get older. But is it something that can be found again? Mitsuki whispered, looking at Inko. In time and by actions, Inko responded. I won't tell you it will be tomorrow or even a year from now, but Izuku needs this, and that is what matters. Mitsuki and Inko sat in silence, watching the two boys talk, trying to find their footing with each other once again. So, how do you know that they are invisible? Katsuki said after hearing about the giggling ghost. Izuku opened his mouth but then shut it. I honestly don't know, Izuku laughed. She just said she was, and I believed her. I mean, who would lie about being invisible and not being able to be invisible? That is a good point, Katsuki said, tapping his chin. She is invisible, Inko said. I met her. Well, there you go, Izuku said, smiling. When the door opened, it was time for Izuku to eat. Katsuki watched a bottomless pit in his stomach, seeing Izuku struggle with such an essential task. Mizuki leaned down and told him to say goodbye before Katsuki could protest. He needs to eat, and I am sure he has physical therapy to do. We can come by again tomorrow, Katsuki nodded. They said their goodbyes. Izuku's shoulders sagged as they were leaving, but with the promise to visit again tomorrow, he perked back up. Izuku and the giggling ghost. So they are saying that I am going to go home soon, he said, his hands in his lap. Oh well, that is good, she responded. You can't live in the hospital forever, and if they are letting you go home. Yeah, that is neat, but I won't get to see you anymore. He missed when he fired the finger guns. She giggled. Well, my mom knows your mom. Maybe I cannot be seen at your house. You would come over and visit me? He said, slightly shocked. Of course, we are friends, right? She said hesitantly. We sure are. Izuku's mood brightened. He now had a new friend. Awakening, Izuku woke up. Something was wrong, so he immediately touched his watch. 3:23 a.m. It rang out in All Might's voice. That little bit was new, and he had Toru to thank. When she looked at the watch, she told him it could be programmed to have different voices. Of course, Izuku wanted All Might. But after that rang out, he listened. It was shallow, but he heard someone breathing. His hearing had gotten much better over his time in the hospital. "Who's there?" he said frantically, his hand reaching for the panic button. "It's all right, Izuku," a man's voice filled the room. "You don't have to be afraid." He had not heard that voice in person, only on the phone, and that was at Christmas most times. "Dad? It's me, son." He heard the footsteps coming closer. "Why are you here?" Izuku whispered. "Why didn't you see me when I got hurt?" "I couldn't, son. I am so sorry," Hisashi said softly. "I was far away, and I was busy with a project. Then." "No, that isn't fair," Izuku yelled. "I don't remember what you look like, and now I don't get to see you." "Izuku, calm down," he urged. "No, this isn't fair, this isn't fair." Izuku was screaming now, slamming his hands on the bed. "Why didn't you come see me? Why didn't you love me enough to see me?" "Izuku." Hisashi was hoping to slip in and slip out. He just wanted to see his son. "I am sorry, son, but you must calm down." The bed was shaking violently, and soon, he noticed that the medical equipment in the room was also shaking. He paused when suddenly Izuku screamed in frustration, and the bed railing flew off, hitting Hisashi and sending him back. Izuku could feel something. He thought it boiling away inside. It was like a pot of water that had been simmering and just about to boil, and suddenly, the flames went nuclear. He felt the rail hit something, and then the other bed rail flew off and hit something again. He could hear his father shouting his name, but it made the fire rage even more. He could feel other things in the room. He knew where they were and their shape. Hisashi ducked as the heart monitor suddenly came barreling at him. The rails of the bed began to bend and wrap around him. "This isn't fair," Izuku roared as things began to lift and fly around the room in a scene of pure chaos. The door flew open as the night nurse burst in. "Who are you? You are not supposed to be in here?" she roared. Hisashi watched as she stumbled back into the hall, avoiding the upheaval of objects thrown around the room. Hisashi struggled as the rails wrapped around him. He was lifted into the air and thrown into a wall. Izuku was on his feet in the center of this maelstrom. He heard the woman calling for security, and alarms sounded. "I hate you," Izuku roared. He could feel the rails around someone big. He stumbled forward, and suddenly, the man flew again across the room, crashing through the bathroom door. He could feel more things there: metal, pipes, and safety rails. He felt something metal fly through the air and hit him in the shoulder. It was a needle. He screamed in a complete rage as all around the hospital, things began to shake and tremble. "I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you." Izuku stumbled towards the bathroom. Hisashi felt the rails loosen quickly. He got free and saw his son staring in his direction, tears running down his face. He saw Izuku stumble. He dashed forward and caught his son as he collapsed. "I am sorry, Izuku," he whispered. "So sorry." Security rushed the room, demanding him to step away from the boy. He laid Izuku gently down, putting his hands up as nurses ran in, grabbed Izuku, and pulled him out of the room. Once Izuku was clear, he peacefully surrendered to the guards. He didn't want to hurt them. They led him out of the room in cuffs. He looked and saw the nurse who had entered the room tending to Izuku while another older woman stood next to them, emitting a blue energy shield of some sort. Inko screeched to a halt in front of the hospital after receiving the phone call that her son had been attacked. She ran into the hospital, flashing her badge. She ran past everyone to her son's room. She looked inside and nearly had a panic attack at the state of the room. Police were there alongside a few local heroes. "Inko," a voice yelled out. She turned and saw the head nurse. "Mamoru," she responded, running over. "Where is Izuku? Is he okay? What happened?" Mamoru grabbed her hand. "He is in the security wing. His quirk awakened when the man was in the room, so he had to be sedated. He appears to be fine." "His quirk?" Inko said, shocked. "We think it was his." Everything was flying around the room, with him at the center. He was attacking that man. Mamoru leaned forward and whispered. "I am pretty sure it was Hisashi." Inko froze. Hisashi came in and attacked Izuku. She started to see red. "I don't think so. We don't even know how he got in." Carla saw Izuku's vitals spike and heard him screaming. He kept saying "I hate you" over and over again. "We had to tranquilize him, and once we did, security came in, and we got Izuku out." The man surrendered, but he looked like Hisashi. Inko grits her teeth. She will have to deal with that later. Her son needs her, so she leaves to head to the security wing. Holding cell. How dare you? She roared. How dare you just show up? What gives you the right to do that to him? I just wanted to see him, Hisashi said, his head still bowed, his hands clasped in his lap. And he is my son Inko. You are not his father. Inko's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. A father is there for his son. A father doesn't just disappear, and if his son is lucky, he receives a phone call. A father doesn't abandon his family. Inko, I never abandoned, he said softly, my work. What is your work, Hisashi? What is so important that you would abandon me and your son? Inko grabbed the bars. What mattered so much that it has been years since you came home, held your son, held your wife? I can't talk about it, he said. Inko, I didn't want it to go like this. I love you, and I love Izuku. You could have fooled me. Inko pulled her arms around herself. You just signed the papers. I hoped that maybe you would fight for us, for this family, but you just, never come near me or him again. Please stay away from us, Hisashi. If you come near him again, he is going to be an orphan because you will be dead, and I will be in jail. Inko turned and left the room. Hisashi sat there for a few minutes before the door opened, and a tall, waifish woman floated in. Was all this necessary, sir? Hisashi got to his feet. Yes, for both of us. Now let's go. He opened the door to the cell, and they exited the building. Security wing Izuku stirred to consciousness. He felt groggy and lethargic. When he tried to move, he felt the restraints holding him in place, and panic began to set in quickly. Izuku. He heard his mother's voice, which sounded muffled. Then he felt her hand grab his. What is going on? I feel weird. Why? He started to say, then remembered, Dad. He shouted, expecting to hear his voice again, but he was greeted with silence. He started to tear up. Of course, he wasn't here. Very quickly, the anguish began to turn to anger, and that same sensation built up inside. An alarm blared, hurting his ears, and the sensation fell away. Izuku, you have to calm down, his mother said, her hand on his forehead. Take a deep breath. He did as she asked. Good, now take another one. The alarm stopped. Keep going. He continued like this for several minutes. Mom, what is happening? Why can't I move? Your quirk manifested, Inko told him gently. My quirk, again, with the alarm, he had to take deep breaths. You need to stay calm right now, honey, Inko squeezed his hand. When your quirk manifested, you went out of control. When that happens, you are sedated, and they moved you to the security wing. We do this because we need to ensure that when you wake up, you don't go out of control again. Now, I need you to tell me what happened. Inko listened as Izuku recounted what had happened in his room and how his dad had been there. It took a bit of prodding and some pauses for deep breaths, but he told her how angry I had made him and how unfair it was. Then, the feeling inside exploded, and he couldn't control it, but he could feel things like metal, throw the bed rails like his father, and feel him through them. Izuku, it sounds like your quirk manifested because you were angry. When I woke you up, and you didn't hear your dad, did you get angry again? She asked. Yes, I just. His shoulders sank, and he took a deep breath. It is all right. Good job. They're not getting angry again. Inko squeezed his hand again. So as long as you can stay calm, we can remove the restraints, and you should be able to leave the security wing. So I can only use my quirk when I am angry? Izuku wondered aloud. What am I, a green rage monster? Inko laughed. What happened is called a quirk trigger. Your quirk reacted to your emotions, in this case, the anger. It was probably the angriest you have ever been. As of right now, it will work when you are angry. We will need to see a quirk counselor. They will be able to help you access your quirk without the anger. What if I can't? He said, his voice full of fear. If I can do it, then so can you, Inko said, kissing his forehead. Now, I will talk to security to get you those restraints. Okay, Mom, at least you were good for something, Dad, he thought. The Long Road Toru was there every day the following week to spend time with him before his release. After hearing about his quirk manifesting, she even met Bakugo, who came by to check on Izuku. So you have to be angry to access your quirk? Bakugo almost wanted to laugh. Izuku was never angry, but the fact that his quirk had triggered that his piece of crap father had shown up made sense to Bakugo. For now, I have to go see a Quirk counselor to learn how to access it without being a green rage monster, he said. His shoulders sagged, but he smiled when he felt Toru take his hand. I am sorry you have such a crappy dad, but you have a great mom, she said. I am sure you will figure it out. Of course he will, Invisalign. Nothing will stop him, not even a colossal idiot like me, Bakugo said, his voice trailing off. The two stayed with Izuku until they had to leave as visiting hours had ended. I know we don't know each other, Toru said as they stood before the elevators, but I hope his belief in you isn't wrong. Bakugo looked at the floating clothes, ready to tell her to piss off, but she wasn't wrong. I hope so too. I don't deserve his forgiveness yet, but I will. You better, Toru said as she left him standing there. It was a vast adjustment period as Izuku transitioned home. The car ride was challenging, leaving him feeling a little car sick, but with his cane in hand, he walked up the path to his home. He could picture the house, though he felt sad knowing he would never see it again. His mother had spent the time he was in the hospital getting the house ready for him. The bathroom has been renovated, the furniture has been cleaned up, creating clear lines for him to navigate the home. He was happy to be home to the familiar smells, but it was bittersweet as well, all the things he wouldn't be able to see again or participate in. Those thoughts had been part of his life while in the hospital, but it was being driven home as he stood in the entryway trying to remember what his room ever looked like. He started having trouble breathing, he was shaking, it was all starting to overwhelm him, then he felt her arms around him. His mother just held him, her whispered assurance of her presence. He didn't know how long they stood there until he felt he could breathe again, but he could. Thanks, Mom, he said. It was just a lot. That is fine, Izuku. Whenever it gets too much, tell me, and we will figure it out together, she said, holding him tight. Too much, we will take slow, too big, and make it smaller. You are not alone on this road. We're in this together, Izuku. I love you, Mom, he whispered. I love you so much, Izuku, she responded, holding him long into the night. It wasn't long before Izuku was enrolled in a special school that catered to his blindness. It was where he began his road of rehabilitation. Learning to read Braille and how to navigate the world, the hospital had been good for the basics to ensure he was safe enough. It was here where it was taken up another level. It was frustrating and rewarding, but at least he wasn't alone. Other kids in the class had been where he was, and they could help guide him and give him tips. Learning proper distancing while not being able to see his biggest struggle, trying to gauge distance was the other. His walking stick was his most important tool. He was taught always to carry a spare. It was interesting as some kids in the class weren't blind but had to learn to adapt to their quirks as they were causing them some trouble. He talked to a girl who had almost the exact opposite problem as him as she had a quirk that let her zoom in on things, and it would get stuck there, so her vision was hyper-focused on the spot, causing her to have to use a cane like him at times not to get hurt moving around. Izuku enjoyed talking with her, she was hyper and had a fun attitude. It reminded him of Toru. The best part is that she was more than happy to help him with his Braille reading, and she also was able to suggest things to keep him busy. Mei Hatsume was quickly becoming his favorite classmate. Then there was Kyoka Jiro, whose quirk gave her super sensitive hearing, so Izuku had to whisper to talk to her. She was friendly but quiet, as she had to wear special headphones. No one in the school asked him about the oversized wraparound sunglasses that he wore to hide his scars. The whisper girl was excellent, only asking if his wound still hurt. She told him about all the different kinds of music he could find for free to pass the time. Almost everyone in his class was very friendly as they had problems to overcome, though that thought bothered him. Mei and Kyoka were going to leave the school at some point. They just needed to adapt to their quirks. Only a handful of kids were permanently disabled like him. There was only one other blind kid in his class, and he didn't talk much. He was polite but seemed to want to be left alone. His mother attended classes with him, where they taught about organizing his closet, unique tags they could put on his clothes written in Braille, and that routine of placing things in the same spot would be the most crucial thing he could learn. Folding money in a certain way so he knew what denomination he was handing out. It was best to only tempt people by handing out large bills where they could short him on his change if someone were there to keep an eye on him. They worked on tactile senses to distinguish coins and feel for ridges on money so that I could help him identify it. The main takeaway was carrying small cash and using a bank card to avoid trouble. Knowing the areas he would be in, how to use his phone by touch, and other things were all part of the curriculum. What wasn't part of the curriculum was how to use his quirk. He kept trying to tap into it but to no avail, and that was frustrating him. The more he failed, the more frustrated he got till he was so furious that he felt it erupt out from him in a wave. As it did, he saw his surroundings, and he froze. His quirk danced away out of touch. It wasn't clear, it was all in shades of grays, whites, and blacks. But he saw it. He saw a vision of the living room. His quirk seemed to echo the metal around him, and his mind filled in the image. He remembered hearing Dr. Dayspring say something about triggering the repair of his visual cortex. Is this what allowed him to see right now? Again, he battled to bring out his quirk. He tried and tried till his frustration had reduced him to tears, and he fell over on the couch and let his emotions wash out of him. Once he composed himself, he took a deep breath and tried again, only to fail. I need to be angry, he thought. He thought about his father again, about his father being in the room. Hearing those hollow, empty words, he envisioned him in the house. Suddenly, it flared again, and his quirk roared to life. Everything appeared in his mind again, but it was distorted this time, constantly pulsing and shuddering. Then, it all went black again as his quirk danced out of touch. It only worked a few more times. As he worked himself up, it would flare out, and the picture would fill his mind, but it was so distorted it was like trying to look at something through a mask of mud and grim. Then he couldn't do it anymore. He couldn't work himself up. The ringing of the doorbell snapped him back to the present. He grabbed his phone. "Answer door," he commanded, hearing the chime of it connecting. "Who is it?" "It is Mitsuki and Katsuki," he heard his aunt respond. "Your mom is working late, and we brought some pizza for dinner." Izuku rose from the couch. Taking his cane, he tapped his way over to the door, undoing the lock and stepping back. "Come on in," he said. Katsuki and Mitsuki froze for a moment. Mitsuki's heart jumped to her throat, and Katsuki's guilt almost drove him to tears. They hadn't seen Izuku's scars before. His eyes had been bandaged at the hospital, and he wasn't wearing his glasses. It was almost like he was wearing a stylized domino mask. It started at his temple, the jagged, black, and burnt skin. They could see the precise pattern of where Katsuki's swipe had started in the path it took across Izuku's face. It tapered off across the opposite eye to a near point. Mitsuki took a quick breath and forced all sadness out of her voice as she told him to eat at the table. Katsuki felt the pain in his chest, watching Izuku tap his way back to the table as he and his mother entered. He had felt guilt every time he saw Izuku moving about with the cane, but seeing the scars, he wondered if he should even be here. Was Izuku calling him to sit next to him and snapping it back? He owed it to Izuku to be there for him, to fulfill that promise of becoming a hero and ensure that Izuku was right there with him. He could not change the past but could do everything to make Izuku's future as good as possible and even beyond. He owed Izuku that. Izuku sat and waited as Mitsuki placed the food in front of him. He could hear the uncertainty in her voice. He smiled at her and guided her to where to put the plate of pizza, the bowl of salad, and the drink. "Perfect, thank you," he said. "How is that school treating you?" she asked. "Great, everyone is pretty nice, though some of their outfits are wild," he said, taking a bite of his pizza. "Wait, how?" She paused. "You damn brat." She laughed, helping to diffuse the uneasiness she had felt seeing his scars. "You don't have to be nervous, Auntie. Things just have to be in a certain routine," Izuku laughed. He shared with her the different things they were teaching him about money and clothes, how it was essential to put things in a particular order so he could dress himself or pay for something should he go somewhere. Learning locations where things were, he could shop with an assistant. He told them about a store in Tokyo with self-guided carts that would lead visually impaired people to the aisle and direct them where to grab the item they were looking for. "Do you need any help with your homework? Or around the house?" Katsuki asked. "I could use some help with my touch recognition," Izuku said. "I have to identify things by touch, and I need someone to tell me if I am wrong. The same goes for my reading. Reading by Braille is weird, to say the least." "I can help you," Katsuki said. "Do you need me to grab you anything?" "No, I need to practice doing things independently." Izuku got up as the Bakugos watched him move around the house. They both had to fight the urge to call out directions or physically walk behind him, afraid he might topple over and some giant toddler. Once he was back at the table, It was slow and deliberate as he reached into his bag and pulled out his items. Katsuki paid close attention to where he set things and how he did it. It was exciting and heartbreaking watching him struggle to read simple sentences and make out math problems that Katsuki knew he could answer in a heartbeat if he knew the numbers. Mitsuki put some clothes in the kitchen to wash and clean up as the boys sat at the table. Once she was out of earshot, Izuku looked toward Katsuki. "I think I can see with my quirk," he whispered. "What?" "Shush," Izuku said. "I was trying to use my quirk earlier and it wasn't working, but then I got mad, and all of a sudden, it flared, and I could see the room. It was not expected, where everything was in grays, whites, and blacks, but I could see it." "Holy shit!" Katsuki exclaimed. "Can you do it now?" "No, I can still only access my quirk when I am angry, so I tried to think of things to piss me off, and when I get really mad, it worked, but it was all distorted," Izuku sighed. "I need to figure it out." "You need to learn to access it without anger," Katsuki responded. "I bet you got so mad that your quirk flared out, which is why it was distorted." "I was thinking the same thing," Izuku said as he traced his fingers slowly over his reading homework. "I don't see the counselor till next month, though." "Well, shit," Katsuki said. "The cat hid in the tree from the fireman?" "Correct," Katsuki replied, checking his answer. He vowed that starting tomorrow, he would learn about how blind people got around. "Has Invisalign come by?" "No, I haven't seen her," Izuku said quickly. He heard Katsuki groan and then felt Katsuki punch him in the shoulder. "You are such a dick," Katsuki growled. Izuku laughed. "No, she is supposed to come by this weekend." "Whatever, stupid Izuku," Katsuki muttered as Izuku laughed harder, nearly falling out of his chair, making Katsuki laugh. Mitsuki smiled as she stepped outside to hang the laundry. "Izuku and Toru." "Izuku. Toru is here," Inko called out, stepping aside for the girl to come in for her and Izuku's sleepover. "Thank you for having me," Toru said as she bounced in. She saw Izuku coming down the hallway. "Izuku," she called out excitedly. "Toru," he called back. Inko smiled at how excited they were to be around each other again. Almost, stop," Toru called out so they wouldn't crash into each other. "Do you like what I did with my hair?" Inko raised an eyebrow at the invisible girl posing like she was showing off her hairstyle. "I love it, but I cannot believe you walked out of the house dressed like that. If I didn't know any better, I would say you let me pick out your clothes," Izuku replied. "Izuku," Toru said deadpan, "you did pick them out." "Oh, then you look fabulous," Izuku said as they laughed. "Are you making fun of the fact that Toru cannot turn off her invisibility and your blindness?" Inko said, confused. The kids nodded, trying harder to suppress their giggles and failing miserably. Inko shook her head as Toru asked him if he had seen the new anime Lost in yesterday, and Izuku started to tell her how much he loved the art style and how the level of detail the artists had put in was terrific. "Easily a shoe-in for anime of the year," he said with all the confidence in the world. "And that fight scene," Toru added. "Who animates a 15-minute fight scene in the first episode?" "I know, right, but when they broke into song at the 6-minute mark, it turned into a rap battle," Izuku sighed wistfully. That was magic," Toru said as they disappeared into his room. Inko stood there, her confusion about to overload her. She looked up the anime. There was no singing, no fighting, and the animation was, shall we say, questionable in quality, and it was only 7 minutes long. The one thing Inko was sure about was that Toru was a breath of fresh air for her son. The way he reacted to her was different from everyone else. If Inko had to guess, it was because of one factor. Izuku was blind and couldn't see the invisible Toru, so Toru wasn't self-conscious about being unseen, and Izuku wasn't troubled by the fact that he couldn't see her. As long as they got along with this, Inko vowed to do everything in her power to ensure they had a presence in each other's lives. All day and into the night, Inko heard them giggling and whispering as they played and listened to music. Inko may have recorded a video for Toru's mom of them watching television and Toru doing her absolute 6-year-old best to describe things. After they took their bath, Izuku and Toru asked if she could sleep in his bed. The hopeful look on Izuku's face and the way Toru was jumping up and down, she couldn't say no. Of course, Inko heard them giggling and laughing when they were supposed to be asleep. She said nothing. She just let the two children enjoy themselves. It was their first sleepover together, and it wouldn't be the last. The Quirk counselor Izuku was guided to the couch where he sat, waiting to meet the Quirk counselor. His experiments in accessing his quirk were reaching impressive futility. He could trigger it, but only after he was so angry about not triggering it that he was on the verge of tears. Thinking of ways to make himself angry was not working anymore. He had developed this numbness from those thoughts as he fixated on them so much in the attempts to activate his quirk. Thinking of his father upset him more than made him angry, and when he dwelled on it, he was so mad that everything was so distorted. If he didn't know where he was, it wasn't any help. He shook the house once, scaring the living daylights out of him and his mother. He played it off like he had a nightmare to wage her worry. Inko knew he was lying, but she didn't want to press him too hard on the subject. Izuku turned to the sound of the door opening and a strange hum that accompanied it. Before Izuku could say anything, a voice said, "Hello, Izuku. Is it okay if I call you Izuku?" The voice had a strange accent that Izuku couldn't recognize but carried this soothing tone and confidence. Yes, that would be fine," Izuku said, finding his voice. "Excellent," the voice replied, that strange humming coming closer. "I am Dr. Charles Xavier. By my name, you can tell that I am not Japanese. I specialize in helping gifted youngsters such as yourself understand and control their quirks or gifts, as I like to call them." "I wasn't expecting an American," Izuku said, shocked, still trying to understand the strange humming. "I am American by way of Britain," Xavier said. Izuku could hear the smile in his tone. "So I would like to begin with you telling me how and when your quirk first awakened. And that hum you were hearing is my wheelchair." "Your wheelchair?" Izuku said, confused. "Yes, I had an accident in my younger years and have been bound to a wheelchair for most of my life. This particular model floats, hence the strange noise you hear," Xavier said. "Now, please begin. I will also ask you questions as you talk. The more honest you are with me, the better I can help you." Izuku nodded and took a deep breath. "It all started when I was playing by the river." Xavier listened and asked Izuku many questions about his feelings when certain events occurred, pressing the young boy on his answers and telling Izuku he was holding back. Before Izuku knew it, the session ended, and he hadn't tried to use his quirk. "Why are you upset?" Xavier asked. "We didn't even try to do anything about my quirk," Izuku said dejectedly. "This is just our first session. As of right now, your quirk is locked behind your anger. That is why that is the only way you can draw it out," Xavier said. "We need to help you overcome that anger, and then we can work on your quirk. The first session is always a chance for us to get to know each other and for me to access you as a patient." "So how am I?" Izuku said. "You are a fascinating and unique young man. You have every right to be angry at your friend Kachon, but still refer to him by his nickname instead of his first or last name, as your culture would demand," Xavier responded. "Your anger towards your father is justified and warranted, given your situation. I believe you are angry with your friend and father and how you were treated before your gift manifested. That anger is a block. If left unaddressed, it could lead you down a path that relies on those emotions clouding your judgment and, from what you have described, your new unique sight." "So I am a ball of anger?" Izuku said, slumping back on the couch. "No, Izuku, you are 6 years old and have had to deal with an extremely traumatic event." Xavier's voice was sympathetic. "You have been robbed of things you enjoy, and while through the unique workings of your quirk, you may be able to reclaim those simple pleasures, it will never be whole, or will it be the same? Tonight, I want you to try and understand that it is okay to be angry. It is okay not to have completely forgiven someone for the accident that robbed you of your sight. It doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a person that, despite all of this, is striving to be a better person than most would be in your situation." "Thank you, Doctor. I will do my best to prepare for our next session," Izuku said, getting to his feet. Guest speaker. "All right, children, I want you all to quiet down as we have a guest speaker here today," Izuku's teacher, Mrs. Molly, said. Once the kids were facing forward, the door opened. Izuku could hear the other kids getting excited as he just sat there wondering what was happening. "Now, everyone, please welcome the pro-hero Ectoplasm." The class called out its greeting, with Izuku knowing who was before him. He was now excited. "Hello, children," Ectoplasm said, his tone of command and comfort washing over the students, leaving no doubt that he was a pro-hero. "Thank you for letting me come in and talk with you all today. I wanted to talk to all of you about perseverance. Does anyone know what that means? Yes, you in the back. It means never giving up, even when stuff gets hard, Nisho said from his seat. Nisho had lost an arm during a villain attack 2 years ago. Very good, Ectoplasm said. The exact definition is persistence in doing something despite difficulty or delay in achieving success. Not giving up when stuff gets hard is precisely that. I know that things have gotten hard for you here due to trouble adjusting to your quirks, accidents that have caused you to relearn how to do things, or just something you were born with. I want to tell you all that as long as you persevere, you can do anything you want in this life. No one said it would be easy. Even if something hadn't put you in this class, it still wouldn't have been easy. Nothing is easy, and there will always be things that will push you back or knock you down, but if you, he prompted. Persevere. They called out. Then you can do it, Ectoplasm said happily. I worked hard to become a pro hero, but then a horrible thing happened. The class leaned in. When I was fighting a group of villains, I lost my legs. The students gasped. Now, I was sad, angry, and upset when this happened, as some of you here who have lost a limb or one of your senses know. Even those of you who are having trouble with your quirk, you get frustrated and mad that it isn't doing what you want it to, right? Izuku could hear those students calling out their agreement. And those of you who were born with a disability, you get mad and wonder why are you like this? Why couldn't you just be normal? Again. Students called out. Well, guess what? You are normal. You are normal for you. And all of us here have to work a little bit harder than other people. But doing that is going to teach us how to persevere. The class said. Exactly, because when things get hard, you all will already know what that is like and how to work hard to make your life what you want it to be, Ectoplasm called out. Some people never learn this essential skill. When something bad or hard happens, they just lay down and give up. But not you guys because you all know how to persevere. I had to work very hard to become a pro hero. It wasn't easy, not like math, he laughed at the groan from some of the students. See, I love math. Math is my favorite subject. I am also a math teacher when I am not being a pro hero. He got a good chuckle off of some of the students' faces. But when I lost my legs, I was like everyone else. I was sad, upset, and even angry, he said to the now silent class. Why did this happen? I was a good person. I am a good person, and here I am without any legs. I bet you all feel like that. Some of you wonder that you were just a kid. Why did this happen to you? Why were you born like this? Izuku and the rest of the class whispered their responses. I think it was so that all of you could learn to persevere and show people that no matter what, you work hard and never give up. You can make your life what you want it to be. Regardless of what happens in the future, you are a hero to someone else. Someone will see what you have gone through and think that if you can, they can do it, too. If you continue to persevere. The class yelled again. Then there is nothing you can't do in life, even be a pro hero with no legs. The class cheered and began to clap. Now I am going to do what I best and clone myself to talk to all of you. Then I will join you all at recess. Thunderous applause made Ectoplasm laugh. Izuku heard the conversations starting. He heard a gentle tap on his desk. I am at the left corner of your desk. Wow, Izuku said. How do you have so many conversations at once? Lots of training, the pro responded. Do you have any questions? How do you learn not to be angry? Izuku said, his head is tilting down. You never really do, Ectoplasm said as Izuku's head shot up. You accept that you are angry, and that is all right. Anger can motivate you and make you push harder than you normally would have. Take the extra step, study harder, or train harder. I had to learn to walk and fight all over. I couldn't do it as I used to. But you can't let the anger consume you. It can't be your only driving goal. I let my anger push me further, but my desire to help people made me finish relearning everything. If you want something, be angry, but remember the good things you are working for. Thank you, Ectoplasm, Izuku said with a smile. He pulled out a folder from his desk. Can I have your autograph? With pleasure, Ectoplasm responded, signing the notebook. What do you want to do when you grow up? I want to be a hero. No, I am going to be a hero, Izuku said, determination filling his voice. Then I look forward to the day we get to team up. If you go to UA, maybe I can even be your math teacher, Ectoplasm said, returning the notebook. Breakthrough. So what happened this week? Xavier asked. A pro hero came to our class and gave us a speech, Izuku said. I think I understand it now. What is it that you understand? Xavier prodded. That my anger will never go away, but I can't let it take away the good things I want to do, Izuku said. Yes, that is correct. You could learn to use anger to fuel your quirk and still do awe-inspiring feats. But if you can find that spot between anger and calm, and if you can find serenity, then the sky is the limit, Xavier said. You can push beyond magnetism and even tap into the electromagnetic spectrum. Not only will you be able to see, but I think there are so many more possibilities for you. How do I find serenity? Izuku asked. I am going to guide you there, Xavier said. Do you know what my quirk is? No, we never talked about it, Izuku responded. I am a telepath. That is how I knew there was more to what you told me, Xavier said. Now, let us begin. Serenity was a feeling or a state of mind. After Xavier helped to guide Izuku there, it was his job to find his way back. He came close a few times, but it would take a few more sessions before he reached that place alone. His serenity was a mix of his anger with his father, his anger at the accident, his love for his mother, and the happiness that his new friends brought him. Especially Toru was his sounding board. He could be open and relaxed with her, and it was something that he would come to depend on as he got older. After Izuku began to tap into that state, his quirk began to respond to his call. With a whoop of excitement, it fell away. But he could call it back. His homework was to use it to see, and he was excited to share the news with his mother. 1 year, nearly to the day of his accident, Izuku Midoriya could finally see again. Briefing. So, how is he coming along? Hisashi said from the other side of the camera. Your son is doing wonderful. He can now successfully and reliably tap into his quirk, Xavier responded. His radar sense will take time to develop, but I believe he will be an amazing person and an amazing pro hero someday. Xavier looked away for a moment. This is an incredible use of resources, though, Hisashi. Are you planning on recruiting him for the program? No, Hisashi snapped. I failed him. He is my son. What is the point of all my sacrifice if I can't do everything I can to ensure he will be safe? Especially if I am not there to protect him or his mother. And the Demon King? Xavier said. Another dead end, Hisashi smiled. But a much fresher one than we have ever had. We have a promising lead. Art project, wait, you can see, Toru exclaimed as she hugged Izuku tightly. Kind of, Izuku said as he explained to her. So, can you see me? Izuku sent out the pulse. Of course, it gave him the whole room and her basic outline but not any discernible features. Not fully yet, but if I keep practicing, I will. I have to learn how to fine-tune it. Izuku, Toru said hesitantly. I don't know if I will ever figure out how to turn off my invisibility, so I want to ask you a favor. Anything, Toru, you are my best friend, he said. Keep practicing, she whispered, hugging him once again. And when you can see me, I want you to learn how to draw so you can draw me. I promise Toru I will practice every day. Izuku found it much easier to enter his state of serenity when he focused on helping Toru, and using metallic pens enabled him to begin his art career. Chokuritsu Academy. Bakugo was forced to change schools after the incident with Izuku, but changing schools did not make the rumors of what he had done go away. His parents were forced to enroll him in a private school where the faculty closely watched him. He didn't care about that. In truth, he deserved it, but the stares of his classmates got to him. At his old school, he was constantly praised and elevated because of his quirk, told how great he would be, and he believed it. He was flawless and without equal, but that wasn't the truth. And the truth was there every time he saw Izuku. Sooner or later, the rumors would spread, and their looks of curiosity changed to unease and, in some cases, fear or disdain. He wanted to see something on Izuku's face, to have Izuku hate or punish him somehow. There was no magic wand to fix things. His mother told him he was the only person who could improve things. He had to be the instrument of change that no one could do for him. He had made a promise to Izuku, and whether he deserved Izuku's forgiveness wasn't something he could decide. His mother had told him before he got out of the car for school, be the hero and person that Izuku believes you can be. Katsuki didn't know if that was possible, but he had to try. He needed to try. It just wasn't his life anymore. He had to live for Izuku as well. Every time he saw Izuku, it was a constant reminder of the debt that he owed, and Katsuki was going to ensure that his debt was paid. Katsuki was sitting off on his eating. Most of the kids ignored him. He heard someone come walking towards him and stop waiting for him to acknowledge them. Katsuki looked, and staring at him was a girl with dark green hair, eyes, and a toothy grin. She shifted her hips to the side and placed a hand there. "Why are you sitting alone, new kid?" she said, the cheeriness of her voice slightly grating on him. "Look, if you're here to try and find out whether the rumor is true or not, you can walk on back to whoever sent you," Katsuki said, taking a bite of his spicy curry. "I don't know. You don't seem to be the type to bite the head off of babies," the girl said. Katsuki looked up. Apparent confusion was evident, but he saw her smile, and immediately, he knew she was messing with him. "So, did you do it?" "No, I didn't bite the head off of babies," Katsuki sighed. "Look. Setsuna Tagaki, but you can call me Set?" She kept that same damn grin on her face. "Tagaki, just go back to your friends looking over here like they're about to cry," Katsuki said. "Whatever the rumors are, aside from biting the heads off of babies, then I just believe that." "Sure thing, new kid," Set chirped. "I just have one question. If it will get you to leave me alone, then fine," Katsuki sighed. "What? Are you sorry?" she asked. "Sorry is not enough," Katsuki said. "All right, then, new kid," Set said, waving as she walked away. "Talk to you later." Katsuki shook his head and went back to eating, and sure enough, every week, she would come back to say hello and ask if he had done something outrageous. Murdered all the kittens in the world. Decapitated puppies for no reason, blew up his prior schools. Started a fight with the higher grades and won, lost a battle to a swarm of kindergarteners. Stole an entire neighborhood right shoes, threw old ladies' clean laundry in the mud, deflated all the tires he ever came across but not thoroughly just enough to mess with people, broke every woman's heel in a department store, super glued an entire class's shoelaces together, freed all the animals at the aquarium, ate apples without paying, started a blood feud with apple pie, stole candy from a baby, didn't like dinosaurs, couldn't read, was afraid of water. Every week, she came up and asked him something. It was his favorite day of the week. That was it. She would come over, ask him something outrageous, then leave when he said no. 2 years after the incident, Katsuki was over at Izuku's. It was a Saturday, and Izuku grabbed his friends and declared that he could see, but not always. Katsuki was delighted, as he had been getting almost weekly reports when he would go over to try and help Izuku with his work or build a relationship. "Wait, does that mean you can use your quirk now?" Katsuki said. "F that. What do you mean you can see now?" Toru demanded. "What?" Mitsuki, who was not far away, yelled out, and Inko tried to shush her. "What do you mean the brat can see?" Izuku and Inko both explained what had happened. The most straightforward answer was that after the accident when Izuku was in surgery, Dr. Dayspring had used her quirk on his visual cortex. With his eyes having been destroyed, his cortex had developed an adaptation to allow Izuku to see. It was tied to his quirk. It wasn't true sight but a type of radar sense that he could use to get the layout of the surroundings. The more metal that was around, the more he bounced his signal, giving him a clear picture, but it had the limit of being overloaded right now as it was still developing, and he was learning to send out the signal in a short burst and send and pull it back. As Izuku explained, beyond the miracle that he was granted a way to see, it also gave him a complete 360-degree picture in his head. It was a struggle with the trace amounts of metals used in printed ink, but he could read a bit from an ordinary book if needed. Izuku told Toru and Katsuki what his quirk counselor had said about him possibly being able to access the complete electromagnetic spectrum. Maybe even allowing him one day to watch television and affect light, as he was already learning sense and using metal around him. He was excited that he might even be able to manipulate the magnetic field to float and form protective shields. "Then that means," Katsuki started to say. "That means that we can be heroes," Izuku finished, "together." "Hey, don't forget about me," Toru said as Izuku pulled them into a big hug. "Together," they all said. Izuku also surprised Bakugo when he told him he would transfer to the same school as Bakugo next year. Toru made a vow then and there that she wanted to do the same. She would have to talk to her mother, but the beginning of the school year was always a time for excitement, the thrill of class assignments, reuniting with previous friends, and the hope of making a new one or two. This was all very exciting for 10-year-olds. The shock of seeing the school hooligan not alone, on the other hand, was not on that list. Katsuki being alone was accepted. After the rumors, most students stood away out of fear of his stigma rubbing off on them. Those who wanted that rub he ignored on a matter of purpose. After a fight after school, that element left him alone. While that solved one problem, it exasperated the other, but since he was alone, it didn't matter. So, aside from his meetings with Set, his school life was quiet. But today, he had company. Izuku and Toru had transferred in. New students would not have been noticed as yet. It would take a little time as people asked if they knew or recognized them. Add that one was invisible, and the other was blind, walking with his hand on the outcast's shoulder. You have a recipe for a gossip storm. Why are you holding my shoulder again and not Toru? Katsuki said under his breath, expressing his dismay at the unwanted attention they were receiving. He was more concerned with the attention that Izuku was receiving. 1. Lots of people. 2. Unfamiliar surroundings. 3. And what was number 3, Toru? Izuku said with a smile. Put your hand on my shoulder. Toru is not strong enough, in case you fall, blah blah. I have muscles. Toru said with a good impression of Katsuki. Katsuki was about to respond. What did you say, Invisalign? Izuku said. It is what you said. Toru said innocently. I know what I said. Shut up. Katsuki grumbled. Stupid Izuku, dumb Invisalign. Izuku was grinning like a fool. Katsuki assumed Toru was doing the same. I hate you both, he said. Sweet, I am in class 2D, Izuku said suddenly. See, my name is right there. Izuku was pointing at a tree. That is a tree, Toru giggled. Maybe you're in 2T, huh. You both are in 2B, Katsuki said, sighing and rubbing his nose. Be like bark, Izuku laughed. Good one. No you idiot, Katsuki said. 1. It is on the board. 2. They told you when you were accepted. Your mom told my mom. Katsuki sighed. And we are all in the same class. Look Izuku. Sorry, can't see remember. And before you start the whole, I would be better off ignoring you. I want to point out that I bet that option is off the table because I am sure everyone is looking at you with my hand on your shoulder. So shut up, Izuku squeezed his shoulder affectionately. Izuku tapped into class and sat at the front near the window. He triggered his quirk to get the layout of the room. All the metal from the desks and everything else gave him a clear picture of the room. Everyone was whispering and talking. Toru was given a seat right behind him, and Katsuki was at the very back. The image faded, but he heard people walking towards them. They passed him and went to Toru. Hi, he heard a girl's voice. I am Aiko Nato and this is Mara Akihara. He heard another shy voice say hi. He imagined one hiding behind the other, a quick trigger from his quirk. He was right. The shy one wore glasses, giving him a clearer picture of her hiding behind the other. Nice to meet you. I am Toru Hagakure, and this is Izuku Midoriya, Toru said. Hi, are you blind? Aiko said hesitantly. As a bat, Izuku said with a smile. Oh, okay. Sorry, Aiko said. So Hagakure, are you shy or something? No, not at all, Toru said. I can't turn off my quirk, so I am invisible 24/7. Oh, that beeps. Aiko paused, and Izuku could hear her fidget. Hey, we don't know each other, but you might want to stay away from Bakugo. He has a bad reputation. You wouldn't want that to rub off on you. Oh, really, Toru said. He seemed nice. He helped my friend find the class and navigate the halls. What did he do? At his last school, he fought with an entire class because some girl turned him down. When the teachers tried to stop him, he put 3 in the hospital during his rampage, Aiko said. He even got into a fight with the leader of the Teihin Da Yoi pack. He is a loner. It is better that way. Oh, okay, thanks for the heads up, Toru replied sweetly. Izuku grabbed his bag and pulled out his notebook and pencils. He noticed that someone was standing next to his desk. You can ask. I won't be mad, he said, guessing it was Mara. How do you write if you are blind? She said quietly. My quirk, Izuku said. I can sense the metal in the lead, I can detect the shapes, and it allows me to read. But how do you know what letters look like to read? Her voice getting a bit more sure. I wasn't always blind. When the accident occurred, I had to attend a special school to relearn how to move about in the world. Izuku opened his book. It was all braille. It took a bit to figure out, but my quirk lets me read normal books, so I wanted to return to regular school. Can I touch your book? Mara said. Of course, he said, sitting back. That is interesting. Was it hard to learn? Mara asked. It was difficult, but my friends and some nice people at the school helped me, Izuku said. I don't know how I can help, but if you need any help, she said, her voice trailing off. Thank you, Mara, he said, smiling. It was a pleasure to meet you. After that, the bell rang, and everyone took their seat. It was nice to be back in a regular school, but it was difficult, and he had a headache by the time lunch came. The constant use of his power to read or write was taking a toll. Toru, he said when the bell rang. Can you and Katsuki lead me to lunch? I have a headache, he said, rubbing his forehead. Are you okay? She said, concerned, taking his hand to help him. Do you need to go to the nurse's office? Just a headache from constant quirk usage, he said. I have been trying to do all this normally like an idiot. What's wrong? Katsuki said, walking up noticing that Izuku wasn't feeling well. He overexerted himself, Toru responded. No, I don't need the nurse's office before you ask, Izuku said. I just need to eat and lay off on trying to do this normally when I am not. Fine, follow me, Katsuki said. Of course, when Izuku and Toru sat at the empty table with Katsuki, the whole lunchroom was buzzing with chatter. Toru and Katsuki did their best to ignore the stares and whispers as they were focused on getting Izuku's food set up so he could eat. Hey, new kid, Setsuna said as she walked up. I didn't know you were recruiting. Are you looking to start up a new gang? New gang? Toru and Izuku said. Yeah, didn't you know that is why he got kicked out of his last school, Set said, looking at Katsuki. He started a gang and took over the school and every business in a 10-block radius. They were so feared that all might had to come to break it up. But no one would admit who the boss was, so he quietly changed schools and has been laying low. Now he is recruiting again, since the heat has died down. Nope, was all Katsuki said as Toru and Izuku were stunned. Damn, thought I was right on that one, Setsuna said. Well, glad you are not eating lunch alone, new kid. I'm Setsuna Tagaki, she said to Toru and Izuku. Nice to meet you, Toru said. Yes, it was a pleasure to see you, Izuku said with a knowing smirk that made Katsuki groan. Wait, Setsuna paused. I thought you were blind. He is, Katsuki said, rubbing his temples. That is his idea of a joke. Setsuna started to laugh. I like it. See you two around. Not likely, Toru said. Set walked away laughing, wiping a tear from her eye. I hate you both, Katsuki growled as he started to eat his lunch. Who was that? Izuku said as he did the same. Setsuna. She comes by at least once weekly and makes wild guesses about why I transferred here. They're pretty amusing. She makes her guess, then I tell her she was wrong. Then she leaves, Katsuki said. Is it always like this? Toru said. Does everybody just stay away? Once the rumors started, the teachers kept a close eye on me. When I first arrived, it was obvious that I had done something wrong, Katsuki said. So yeah, pretty much. That must have been lonely, Toru said. It is what I deserved, Katsuki said. After what happened, I should have been alone or in prison or whatever. But this idiot. Izuku smiled around, taking a bite of his sandwich. None of them matter. I don't care what they think or say. They aren't on the list. What list? Toru said. The list of people who 1, matter, and 2, whose opinion of me I care about, Katsuki said. Then Setsuna came walking over with her lunch tray and sat down. What are you doing? Making sure you don't corrupt the new kids, Setsuna said. Oh, thank you so much, Izuku said dramatically. He was talking about hunting down kittens. See, good thing I am here, Setsuna said with a smile. And what the hell are you eating? She hurried away from Katsuki. I can smell the spice on that from here. Goodness, you are trying to murder your taste buds. I mean, holy cow, you want your food to put up a fight on the way out, don't you? Toru and Izuku lost it, and Katsuki was just stunned. I tell him that all the time, Izuku said. If it doesn't burn going in, then it isn't worth eating, Katsuki muttered and ate his lunch. That was how it started. Katsuki was torn. He liked that he wasn't alone, but he was worried about Toru and Izuku, who didn't care. When Setsuna came and sat with them, the rumors increased. Katsuki kept his mouth shut when he heard her getting warnings that she would ruin her reputation sitting with him. What nearly made him go off was when they started to talk about how much of freaks Toru and Izuku must be to be sitting there. Mara would always come and talk with Izuku, offering her assistance. She was quiet but seemed eager to help. She finally worked up the nerve to ask him, "How do you know Bakugo?" "I have known him since we were little," Izuku responded. "Do you know why he transferred here?" "I do, but it isn't my place to say," Izuku said. "I will say he made a mistake and had done everything he can to try and fix that mistake." That day at lunch, Mara sat with them. That was how the rehabilitation of Katsuki's reputation slowly began. Izuku, the adjustment to regular school was aided by his teachers providing him with the material in braille form, as the constant usage of his quirk to read and write was giving him headaches. Hearing the students fumble as they tried to talk with him, they couldn't ask him what shows he watched. An easy topic was music, something Izuku had gotten increasingly into once he was robbed of his sight and thanks to his friend Kyoka. He kept in contact with Kyoka and Mei, two girls who went to different schools but got together occasionally. Kyoka would come over to listen to music with him, and one afternoon, after he convinced her, she brought her guitar to play for him. When she played, he activated his quirk very lightly. The strums of the guitar were this beautiful vibration that, as he lost himself to it, seemed to reverberate different colors. The vibrations painted such a vivid picture of the girl's face that it made him smile. "What?" she said, stopping her from playing when she saw him approaching her. "Is everything okay?" When Izuku began to explain how he could use his quirk to see some, and that her playing and the colors had just been so mesmerizing and how peaceful and happy she looked playing that he couldn't get it out of his head, she was thankful he was blind and couldn't see her blush. "I can teach you," she said. "Really? It might be hard, but maybe it will give you something to do," she said. "I know you get bored." "Thank you, Kyoka," he smiled. "Toru. You should tell her," she said to Katsuki as they left the school. Izuku had gotten the flu and was home, so it was just them. "Tell who what?" he said. "Setsuna," Toru replied. "Tell her the truth. She seems like a nice person, and for all this time, she has been coming by your table to talk to you, even if it was just for a minute. She cares. And you smiled when she came up the first day. You also called her Set. I think she wants to be your friend. The truth will come out eventually the longer she stays around us. She sees how protective you are of him." "Damn it, Toru," Katsuki said. "I liked you better when you just made dumb jokes with Izuku and no sense." "What did the toothless termite say when he entered the bar?" Katsuki just groaned. "Is the bartender here?" "I hate you," he said, rubbing his temples. "You can't fall in love with me." The next day at lunch, he asked Set to meet him in the library after school. Set raised an eyebrow but held off on teasing him for now. She came in and found him sitting in the back corner. She walked over and saw him nervous. "I want to tell you why I transferred to this school. It is obvious that something happened at your last school, something bad that was why the teachers were all over you like a hawk," she said, taking a seat. "Some sort of accident. Now that I have met Izuku and Toru, I guess it has something to do with Izuku and why he is blind." Katsuki's mouth was hanging open. "You still feel guilty even though he has forgiven you. That speaks volumes that he lost his sight but still has it in him to forgive you. You can't forgive yourself, so you let the rumors swirl while you just sat back and let everyone assume the worst." Set sat down across from him. "You were trying so hard to push people away. I knew that whatever had happened still ate at you. Evil people who do bad things don't feel guilty about it," Set said. "I didn't know what you had done, but I came by the table to tell you that someone cared enough to reach out. How did I do?" "How did you figure all that out?" Katsuki said. "My mom is a lawyer," Set smiled. "I inherited my smarts from her. How else do you think I have the #1 rank in the school? I like crime drama and puzzles." "God, I am going to sound like a damn idiot," Katsuki said, running his hands through his hair. 3 years ago, I made a mistake and cost Izuku his sight. It made me afraid of my quirk. He made me promise to keep trying to be a hero because he couldn't. He was having trouble accessing his quirk, so I called him Deku and made fun of him. I was a foolish kid. Now that you know all of that, he sighed. Set was smirking. Do you want to be my friend? He said quietly. Sorry, didn't hear that. Set leaned forward, her head resting on her hands. You are just like them, Katsuki sighed. With Izuku and Toru here, I am not alone anymore, and you coming by the table every week was the best part of the week. I would like it if we could be friends. Set smiled. Sure. Katsuki Bakugo, we can be friends, but you have to promise me one thing? What is that? Katsuki said cautiously. You can't fall in love with me, Set replied. Yeah, I think I can manage that. Katsuki rolled his eyes. Hisashi Midoriya Hisashi was used to being away from his family. Being away from his son while he struggled and traveled this new road was the hardest thing he had to do. That was why he sent Xavier to be there when he couldn't. He had met Charles while on an assignment in America. They had met while tracking Charles's stepbrother. In the course of the fight, Charles was paralyzed. Hisashi had carried him 60 miles back to civilization, and a lifelong friendship was born. So he turned to Charles to guide Izuku, and he was so happy hearing how his son had grown with his quirk. Hearing that Izuku had found a way to use his quirk to see had filled Hisashi's heart with pride. That night in the hospital, the way his son had reacted. He knew that his son's anger and pain were the catalyst for him accessing his quirk. The knowledge that he hurt his son so much weighed on him, pressing down on his very soul. There were two people he was supposed to love, cherish, and elevate, his wife and son. Both people wanted nothing to do with him, and neither wanted to see him ever again. In his son's case, he would never see him again. When he learned that Izuku had found a way to see, a hope sprang in Hidashi's heart that one day. He shook his head. His entire life had been dedicated to keeping this country safe. His every moment had been in that pursuit. It started with chasing down a rumor, chasing down whispers and shadows. It was like chasing a nightmare or a memory. It was never direct, it was a rumor or a myth. But there was enough there. The death of various heroes over the years, there was enough. As a member of the Hero Commission, he had been tasked with hunting down and bringing to justice some of the nation's most dangerous and elusive criminals. At times, those pursuits took him across the globe. In those instances, he found more clues, myths, and legends. Every nation had its boogeyman. Every country had its monsters. Japan's monster had proven elusive, but he was closing in on the trail, which kept getting warmer and more reliable. An organization had been slowly discovered. The deeper Hisashi dug, the closer he got, the more the layers revealed themselves. It was no longer a myth, no longer a legend. There was a man behind it all, an organization behind it all, an organization that could and was being dismantled. The monster had made enemies that still drew breath. That enemy was the #1 hero in the nation, All Might. All Might, his sidekick Sir Night-Eye, and a mentor figure, Gran Torino. These heroes had been waging a secret war against the same self-proclaimed demon lord that Hisashi had been hunting. They were hunting the same monster, and it was only a matter of time. Maybe when it was over, if he explained himself, his wife and son would give him another chance. Magnetic pull. Kyoka Jiro loved music. Her parents were professional musicians, and she considered the possibility of becoming one herself. Then, on other days, she wanted to be a hero, and it was helped along by this blind boy she knew who was obsessed with this idea. He told her how if she tried, why couldn't she do both? Kyoka sat back and wondered the same thing. Why couldn't she do both? Music was so important to her that it could save people by bringing joy and peace. A hero did all those things and kicked the villain's butt. Who said she couldn't do both? Kyoka was at Izuku's house every other Saturday to help him with his music lesson and hang out. When Mei found out they were having secret hangouts, as she put it, she demanded to come over and join them. This was how Kyoka and Mei met Toru, Katsuki, Setsuna, and a shy girl named Mara. They would listen to music, play music, and talk about everything, including heroics. All of them wanted to be heroes except Mei, who was going to become the world's greatest inventor. Though her track record made them worry, only one thing she had created hadn't exploded. It was a bracelet for Izuku, It had these small metal discs that would unlock and fly out so he could bounce his quirk off of them. It also had a locator in it after they may have lost him in the mall once. The plates emitted a unique magnetic frequency, and their shape would direct Izuku's pulse back to him, creating a much sharper image. She made little versions that Inko put around the house to help him navigate better. Kyoka's desire to be a hero had nothing to do with the blind boy who wouldn't stop working. He wouldn't stop trying to chase his dream. The way he would practice drawing or his smile when she played guitar. Telling her of the colors he saw when she played. Or the picture he created for her that took her breath away. How he couldn't stop smiling and bouncing around when she took him to his first concert, Deep Dope. Or the fact that he had to explain to a police officer that he wasn't on drugs when he was talking loudly about the colors of the concert. The loud, overly protective, explosive blonde was so dedicated to atoning for the incident that had robbed Izuku of his sight that he was constantly studying and learning how to help Izuku navigate the world. The invisible girl, whose jokes were just as bad as Izuku's but whose heart was so big and caring for those around her, may have rubbed some of the rough edges off of Kyoka. And that girl could throw hands. When a group of idiots had shoved Izuku into the girls' changing room when they were in junior high, Katsuki didn't even get a chance. Toru, Setsuna, and Kyoka had settled it before he even heard about it. Mara, who was quiet and helpful, didn't want to be a hero, who, with her quirk, could transcribe words directly onto a page and had practiced and practiced till she could create braille sheets for Izuku during classes so he had notes. Or how she made sure the other girls in the locker room knew that Izuku was blind so he didn't get labeled as a pervert. Or how she studied blueprints and translated May speak onto that blueprint. Setsuna was the funniest and biggest ball of mischief that had ever been born. How Set managed to be the #1 ranked student, the student president, and get detention at least once a month was a mystery. And she got them out of being suspended when they taught those assholes a lesson. It had nothing to do with that. When she was with them, she felt like it was where she belonged. May, for the longest time, only one thing mattered: inventing, taking things apart, figuring out how they worked, and making new things that may or may not explode. Then, something else mattered: helping a friend and helping another friend. Support. She was going to become a support engineer, and she was going to be there for her friends. The friends who made her feel better when she was sad or who would call her as they didn't go to the same school. Who didn't leave her out or tell her not to make things blow up. There was that one time, but she didn't want to talk about that. May could get lost in something, absorbed, and lose track of everything. But they didn't. They would come to get her, drag her out of the shed, and take her into the shower. Make sure she went to bed. They were tricky, those damn watch parties. She would be sitting there watching something, then bam, morning. They understood her, but few people did when she talked about a baby or how something could be made or integrated. They understood her, not everything, but enough to add or subtract something to make her baby better. They even showed up and took her to her first dance, all of them. She said she didn't want to go. No one had even asked her, but they didn't have it. They danced and had fun. She was a princess for the night. May knew that she would have a good life even if she had never become famous or if no one had ever known her name, as long as she could keep her friends safe. And create some good explosions along the way. Setsuna. Okay, this was not what she expected when she sat down at that table, nor was she hoping to have to defend her #1 ranking all the darn time so vigorously. Katsuki and Izuku were hunting dogs with a scent. They came after her title mercilessly and didn't even get her started during the semester that Katsuki took it from her. If she didn't want to be a hero, hanging around them was the cure. Toru was just as bad. It would have almost been enough to be boring, but they wanted to have fun. Hang out, sit around, talk, dream, and damn it, if they weren't the most incredible group to be around. Kyoka's addition was more frosting on the cake, and according to Setsuna, there was never something as too much frosting. It was being surrounded by people who inspire you to be better, who could ask for anything more. Through junior high, now on the verge of high school, continuously pushing each other to study, train, and work a little harder. Laugh more, dance, sing, create, and enjoy the moments of life more. It was all so clear the journey they were on. From the moment she sat at that table, it would not stop. Set believed there were moments in life when you knew certain things, and when she met Kyoka and Mei, when the group all came together, and dreams and wishes started to manifest, these people would be with her for the rest of her life. One small problem. She told Katsuki he wasn't supposed to fall in love with her. What happens when she falls in love with him? Toru. She had a special binder that held all the pictures he created for her. Over the years, he would make an image, simple at the beginning but constantly more elaborate as time passed. She and her parents wept when he gave her the realistic photo on her 14th birthday. He made them for her every year after that once he figured out how. Watching him work and constantly trying to improve, not just to chase the shared dream of heroics, but when he came stumbling to her house, he told her he would be able to bend light one day. If he could bend the light, she might be able to see herself. It was something his Quirk therapist had told him. She saw him trying so hard for her to advance his control to bend light, even if just for a moment so that she could see herself. How could she not fall in love with him? She had been in love with him for so long now. She sat looking at him as he created her latest portrait. She noticed it. When he drew her himself, she was prettier than the photos. Her features were softer, her lines more symmetrical, the pops of color he added. She was bathed in golds, or vibrant rainbows that threatened to dance off the page. When she asked why he drew her like that, "That is how I see you," he said. She saw him blush and fidget with his hands. Their first kiss was tender and everything either of them could have wanted. Katsuki. Watching Izuku get more robust and work to get stronger, not just in his body but in every aspect, drove Katsuki to do the same. To be there every step of the way with him, learning how to exercise with him, running the track with a rope to match their pace, and guiding Izuku around till he had it memorized. He still felt like a piece of shit when he would go to the movies or watch a show and thought of how much Izuku would like it. How Izuku made him go out to the movies with their friends, made him go and do things without him. "Katsuki, you have to stop punishing yourself," Izuku said. "I appreciate everything you do, but you and them can't deny yourselves things just because I can't partake. Go if you go, then they will feel better about going." Setsuna being better than him academically was the best thing that ever happened to him. It drove him to do better, and when he fell short, it wasn't the end of the world. Before the incident, he had been wrapped up in this notion of being the best, strongest, never losing. After the incident, it was about not letting the guilt eat him alive. So when Izuku and Toru came to the school, pushing him to do better was nice. Setsuna taunting him about her higher rank helped to rebuild that competitive desire. When she still beat him and danced around telling him he would never overtake her, it didn't make him mad, it made him want to try harder. There was that glorious semester where he took her top spot, but she came and took it back. He learned to give it his all and lose that it wasn't the end of his life. Watching Izuku stumble and fall but never stop to let the failure define him. He saw it when Izuku started trying to draw with his quirk or playing the guitar. The steady march of progress. How to be a proper friend and support and encourage in a way that lifted those with him. Toru, Kyoka, and Setsuna were all pushing to be the best versions of themselves. When he heard Setsuna say that, it wasn't about being the number one hero or the hero that never lost but being the best version of herself. That was what they were all doing. Mara didn't want to be a hero. She wanted to attend the business course in the UA. Mei wanted to be the best support engineer she could. That girl was constantly working, designing, and creating things for them. Gauntlets for Katsuki, a guitar weapon for Kyoka, a breakable suit for Setsuna, fabric that disappeared for Toru, and numerous gadgets to improve Izuku's life. Kyoka aimed to be a top hero and chart-topping musician and to help people in every way she could. Toru pro hero, Izuku pro hero, Katsuki pro hero. Of course, there was that unspoken vow to protect Izuku, but they couldn't be with him 24/7 if he became a pro hero. So how could they help him be the best hero he could be? It was by being the best version of himself. Once upon a time, Katsuki Bakugo would have only defined true success as the world bowing to how great he was or acknowledging his sheer strength. Not because if he got to sit around with this same group of misfits in 20 years on a Saturday, his life would have gone well. One small problem: he wasn't supposed to fall in love with her. But she made him feel better. Since day one in that school, she was that bit of sunshine. She pushed him and made him want to be a better version of himself. He wasn't supposed to fall in love with her. Izuku. His life could have crumbled that day the incident occurred. It could have gone in a different direction, but it was nothing like he had imagined. No matter how it was examined, being rendered blind is a significant, terrible, and painful event. Yet it shifted and shaped all that has come since then. Finally, being able to access his quirk, he wouldn't have met Toru if he hadn't been injured, and Katsuki would not have changed. Had he not gone to that particular school, there would have been no Kyoka or Mei. Without Katsuki transferring schools, there would have been no Setsuna or Mara. No Dr. Xavier, no meeting ectoplasm, no inspiration that he could live a fulfilling life and follow his dream of being a hero. Izuku knew that guilt drove Katsuki. No matter what Izuku said, he knew it would never fully go away. But after he joined him in school, he saw it alleviated some of it. The more people that joined the group, the more the burden was slowly lifted off of Katsuki's shoulders. The more they trained, the more they improved. He could feel it. A quirk is a muscle that needs to be exercised to find the maximum usage and get stronger. Once he had found access to his quirk, he worked on it every day to be able to see, read, and navigate. It involved exercises in fine control, reading letters, drawing, and seeing his friends. Or when he got lost in the mall, but the less they talk about that, the better. To make it stronger, he needed to lift weights with it. He would work out with Katsuki and his friends at the gym or with some dumbbells they had at home, but once those things were mastered, the question of where they could work with their quirks without getting in trouble was solved by Mei. More importantly, Mei's family and her hobby. Mei's family had a junkyard, and she liked to scavenge scraps from a beach near her home that cosplayed as a junkyard. So on the occasions they would go to her house, she had access to all kinds of things he could lift or Katsuki could blow up. Natural obstacle courses for Setsuna to break apart and maneuver around and through. The perfect place for Kyoka to use her jacks to track people down for hide and seek. Kyoka was Toru's perfect foil for stealth practice. Toru, the most beautiful girl, followed closely by Kyoka when she was playing music. But he was in love with Toru before knowing what that meant. They found solace in each other. Toru was invisible, an aspect of her quirk that couldn't be turned off. It is fine when it first happens but gets old fast. It is hard to have conversations when you cannot read someone's facial expressions. But since he was blind, there was no way for him to see her, and when he did develop a way to know, he was the one person who could see her. There was a comfort in their disabilities. Neither had to put on a show or dance through the pleasantries of soothing people who weren't sure how to handle them and said disabilities. People try to be friendly, and there is a noticeable strain because they don't have to deal with those everyday problems that Toru and Izuku did. So when they would refer to seeing something, they would feel guilty about looking at a hairstyle with Toru. When it was just them, they could be free. He worked so hard on things. Yes, it would make his life easier, but he wanted to give her those simple gifts that people took for granted, a photo, portrait, or someone who could see you. Aside from Katsuki, Toru was the first to see him without the glasses that hid his scars. He felt comfortable to show them to her and let her see them for years before anyone else. Of course, when someone stole them in class as a prank, Toru helped him hide his face till they were returned. Toru worked hard to describe things for him, such as the colors or how vibrant something was. It was hard not to see color. He would question if what he thought or remembered as red or green was really what those colors were. He still didn't know, but Toru would do her best to paint a picture with her words. He loved her and was in love with her. That day when she kissed him was the best day of his life. It was better than learning to see his quirk and realizing that he would be able to try and live the dream of being a hero. It was the perfect way for them to start high school. Hisashi Midoriya. He lay in the hospital room with a broken leg, arm, ribs, sternum, orbital socket, shoulder, you name it, and it was more than likely broken. That wasn't the worst part. His quirk was gone, and in the battle with the self-proclaimed Demon Lord or All for One, Hisashi had lost his quirk. The fact that All Might was still alive was another miracle in and amongst itself. He had lost half his squad in the battle. All Might's allies were laying in beds like him, so many things broken that it was easier to do an outcount. The feeling of his quirk being gone was akin to missing a limb or a sense. He had an inkling of understanding of what his son had and was suffering through. He closed his eyes and let his mind drift away to sleep. With how many painkillers he was on and the state of his body, there wasn't anything more he could do. But at least it was over. He was thankful for the aid of Recovery Girl in his healing process. The thought of months in the hospital was not on his list of fun activities. The president of the Hero Commission came to see him personally and congratulated him on a job well done. Of course, his secretary was the one to deliver the news that he was going to be removed from the field. He would be offered a supervisory position at a branch of his choosing, but his days in the field were over. His career was effectively over. Though he still knew he could pass on, they felt that due to his disability, it would be best for him to ride a desk until he retired. Getting to rehab with All Might, or Toshi as Hisashi called him now, was fun. Despite the injuries, the man quickly made Hisashi laugh and never made him feel weird for losing his quirk. Toshi seemed to understand his new life, as he had been chasing All for one longer than Hisashi and had come across those left in his wake. Hisashi worked hard to get back in shape. He wanted one thing. If his career was over, he could beg forgiveness. He bid Toshi well as he left the center and made his way to try and reclaim his dream. Inko. She was not prepared when she walked into her office for her 10 o'clock meeting and saw her husband sitting there, coupled with the state that he was recovering from something significant and the cane by his chair. He looks so thin, she thought. Is this medical or personal? She said, sitting. Personal, he replied. Then what do you want? Hisashi, she said, looking him over, resisting the urge to look him over or fuss. He still held a place in her heart despite the hurt. I want you back. I want to try and build a relationship with my son, he said, her mask dropping as the shock of his words hit her. Are you out of your damn mind? She finally said. Why would I ever take you back? Especially after all these years. And why would I let you near my son? Aside from cards and presents on his birthday and Christmas, you haven't been around for his entire life. She glared at him. So you can feel better. What the heck happened to you anyway? I just want a chance to explain, he said. I want to tell him and you why things happened the way they happened and beg for a chance to be part of your lives again. So you can disappear, she retorted. No, there is no more disappearing, he sighed. I have a desk job now. I got injured on my last assignment, broke almost everything, and also, he took a deep breath. I lost my quirk, I am quirkless. What do you mean by assignment? She said, shocked. And how did you lose your quirk? Inko. I wasn't just a government contractor, he said. I was, but under the employment of the Hero Commission, I was the head of a special task force that was charged with hunting down some of the most dangerous villains that Japan had ever seen. That took me international as we worked with various agencies around the world. The last assignment that kept me away all these years was tracking down a dangerous man and his origin. In the final battle, I was seriously injured and had my quirk stolen by this criminal. He was killed during the battle, and my quirk went with him. You were some secret agent, bounty hunter. Inko sputtered. She was about to say more when he showed her his credentials and medals. Why did you marry me? Because I love you, Inko, he whispered. I have traveled around the world, been to exotic and not so exotic locations, and seen thousands of women, but none of them are as beautiful as you. You made me dream of a life outside the task force or the commission when we met. Like a fool, I tried to have it all without being able to tell you the truth. Why are you telling me the truth now? She said softly. Because I finally can. I can tell you and Izuku the truth and beg for a second chance, Hisashi said, leaning towards her and searching her eyes for any hint that he had a chance. Give me a second chance, Inko, and let me spend the rest of my life making it up to you and Izuku. I will be there for you both every night and do anything you ask. Damn you Hisashi, Inko whispered. How can you come back into our lives like this? How can you come into my office and beg me to take you back? How can you make me feel this way after all the bullshit you put us through? Tears ran down Inko's face. I am sorry, Inko. Hisashi slid out of his chair and kneeled. I am so sorry. I never stopped loving you or Izuku. I never stopped checking up on him or you to ensure you both were okay. If it was just me, Inko said. But I can't and won't put Izuku through this if he doesn't want it. He is my life now, and I will honor his wishes. Inko wiped the tears away. Now get up, I am sure that is painful for you. You can buy me tea from the cafeteria tonight. I will talk with Izuku and see where we can go from there. That night, are you crazy? Izuku said, his hands clenched, his head started to pound. Izuku honey, calm down, Inko said gently. I told him I would talk to you, that you are my life, and that I wouldn't decide to meet with him again if you didn't want it. Izuku started to take a deep breath. He wants a chance to apologize. At the very least, I think it would be good for you to hear that, and then you can tell him anything and everything you ever wanted to. It would be good for you to talk with him and get those emotions out. I don't know if I can, Izuku said, collapsing into her arms, his emotions wrecking him. I hate him and still dream about him sometimes, he said as they sank to the couch. I wish he would show up so I could tell him to get lost, but I want him to come to me and tell me why. This is the chance to learn why, Inko said, holding him tight. This is your chance for answers. You don't have to let him back in your life if you don't want to. No one will make you do that. Not me, not anyone. But you have a lot of complicated emotions when it comes to him. At least this will be a chance for you to get maybe the answers you seek. And after that, he said, clinging to her, that is up to you. Tell him to go pound sand, tell him to disappear and try again never, or tell him that you need time, Inko said. I need time. If he can give you the closure you need, the answers that allow you to move past this, then that is all I want from you when you talk to him. I'll talk to him, Izuku said. But if I want to leave at any time, we leave. Of course, Inko said. He couldn't do it alone. He thought about it and talked with Dr. Xavier, and he couldn't do it. It was not that he was alone, Inko was there with him. But it couldn't be just the two of them and his father. He didn't want to be at a restaurant again or after the first time. The thought of his father coming into his home made him feel like he would contaminate it. His father being in the same place where he had so many happy memories with his friends would somehow sully them. The first time he tried to meet with him, as soon as he knew he was there, Izuku froze. He froze and began to shake, trembling with rage. The entire restaurant began to shake, all the metal in the room vibrating. Inko hugged him closely and whispered feverishly as she led him away. Once he couldn't sense him anymore, he began to calm down. He just clung to Inko, crying and mashing his teeth as his emotions poured out of him. He couldn't do it, so they walked away. Even the thought of calling him anything paternal, thinking it set Izuku on edge. He was simply Hisashi. If he was going to try this, he needed to do it with his friends and minus his mother. He was afraid to let her see him like that again. After the restaurant, he was scared to let her see him on the verge of losing control. She didn't look at him any differently or act differently with him, but the look of worry, concern, and a hint of fear bothered him. Katsuki and Toru didn't hold back when they heard that Hisashi had returned. Kyoka was right there with him, along with Mei. Set was upset at the emotional damage her friend had caused. Still, she appreciated that at least Hisashi wanted to explain, not that it would correct or fix anything that happened but that Izuku would have an understanding instead of constantly wondering. Set and Mara felt that would at least help Izuku to close that chapter and move on to the next one. His friends would abide by his decision and support him no matter what. Izuku wanted to try again but felt a public place without much metal would be the best option, so he chose a park. Toru and Kyoka would be by his side. Katsuki wanted to be. He said that trying to rein in his anger would be difficult for him so he would hang back with Set, Mara, and Mei. It was a warm day at the park, and his friends had made plans for afterward with him, depending on how the meeting went. Izuku had a few minor panic attacks that delayed them before he could get to the meeting spot. Toru held his hand, and Kyoka rested his hand on her shoulder as they guided him. They saw his father looking at them when they came around the corner by the big oak tree. There weren't even pictures of the man in the house, so they had no idea what he looked like, and it wasn't a subject that had been brought up. He was large, over 6 feet tall, and looked in good shape, though he appeared to have lost weight recently. Izuku stopped and took a few breaths before giving Kyoka a squeeze to keep moving forward. They guided him to the bench, where he sat. "We will be just on the other side of the tree," Toru whispered. She had never wished she could turn off her quirk more than now so that Hisashi could see her glaring at him. Thankfully, Kyoka was doing it for her. Once they were on the other side of the tree, Izuku used his quirk and got an image of Hisashi and the girls on the other side. "Thank you for meeting me today, son," Hisashi said. "Don't call me that," Izuku said quickly, his anger flashing. Hisashi flinched. "Is Izuku all right?" he said. Izuku nodded. "What is it that you want?" Izuku said. "I want to tell you why I was gone," Hisashi said. "I hope that after I do and you have time to process it, we can open up a line of communication." "To what end?" Izuku's voice was rife with emotion. On the other side of the tree, both girls flinched. They could hear the hurt. "I would like to build a relationship with you. Any relationship that you would allow us to have. Even if that is one where you know that if you need help, I am an option," Hisashi replied. "And if I tell you I never want to hear from you again?" Izuku's voice trembled. "Then I will honor that the best I can," Hisashi said. "But I want you to know that if that ever changes, I will be ready for that opportunity." "Did you ever love us, ever love me?" Izuku asked. "I love you and your mother so much, Izuku," Hisashi answered. "I love you both so much." "Then where the hell were you?" Izuku said. "Why were you never here? I didn't even know what you looked like in real life, only in stupid pictures and videos. Then I get blinded, and I will never see you again. Now you show up. Now you want to explain and be a part of my life." Hisashi's face was stoic as his son yelled. "I couldn't be there because of my work," Hisashi said. "I don't care. I don't care. I wouldn't care if you were freaking All Might in disguise. You were gone. Those two girls, Toru and Kyoka, their dads, were the ones that taught me how to shave and gave me the talk." Izuku shouted. "Masaru took me fishing and gave me advice for my first dance. He answered the phone when I got lost in the mall. Now you want to come around. What was so important that you couldn't be there when something important happened?" "I am a member of the Hero Commission," Hisashi replied. "I lead a task force whose job was to track down and bring to justice some of Japan's most wanted and dangerous criminals. That job took me worldwide in pursuit of them. During those pursuits, we began uncovering information about a mysterious underworld figure in Japan, a villain overlord. The deeper we dug, the more we found that they were not just rumors or spook stories. They were all true. With some help, we could dismantle his empire and take him down. I was injured in the final battle and now have a desk job at the commission office in Mustafa. I can tell you all this now that I am no longer part of that task force. Then why didn't you just tell us you were off chasing villains?" Izuku said. "You didn't need to give us details. The kids would have made fun of me for saying my dad was a secret agent, but it would have been better than you just ghosting us. Now that your mission is done, you can talk to us, speak to me. Did you discover what a cell phone is? I know you know how to write. You couldn't have sent a goddamn letter. I wasn't worth 2 minutes a week, every other week or month. Not even something personal in those damn birthday or Christmas cards, love Dad." That was all they said. "Izuku, it wasn't safe for me to tell you or your mother," Hisashi said. "I don't care," Izuku said, the bench rattling underneath him as he got to his feet. "Then you shouldn't have married my mother or had me. You shouldn't have bothered if you couldn't do most minuscule things to tell us you loved us." Hisashi was silent. "But thank you," Izuku said after a minute. "Thank you," Hisashi said. "Thank you for making the mistake of making Mom fall in love with you and get pregnant with me," Izuku said. "Thank you for not being there when I needed you so I could have people who love and care about me step up and do a better job than you ever could. Thank you for returning when you did because my anger and hatred of you allowed me to awaken my quirk." The bench stopped shaking as Izuku spoke. "The quirk that will allow me to be the hero I always dreamed about. I don't need you in my life. I don't think I want you in my life. This year at least try to send a better damn Christmas card. Maybe I will send you on back, if you are around. Izuku looked toward Hisashi, wiped his tears, and started to walk away. Toru and Kyoka came out and walked with him. Do you want to go home? Toru asked. No, let's go do whatever you guys have planned, Izuku said. I could use the distraction. Hisashi stood there till they were long out of view. He sat on the bench, looking up at the branches of the enormous oak tree. He couldn't fault Izuku's anger or outrage. Why hadn't Hisashi spared a few minutes a week to call and talk to them? Made up some cover as his company was sending him to handle different negotiations, or hell, even a secret agent. He didn't know how this would go, but I had not gone even closer to his basic hopes. The only part is the comment about the Christmas card at the end when Izuku left the door open. Hisashi didn't move till after the sun had set, then he pushed up off the bench and started walking back to his car. Charles had warned him that the anger in Izuku ran deep, that the torrent of emotions this would stir up would be challenging to navigate. The only hope that Charles had given him was that at the center of Izuku was this beautiful center filled with love and the capacity for forgiveness. If Hisashi had returned sooner, it might have been a more straightforward outcome, but now it would be a nearly impossible battle. It wouldn't be his first impossible battle, and he had all the time to focus on this one. He couldn't be there right now, but maybe he could help from the shadows. He knew people from all over the world, and that woman was in Italy. She had a magnetism quirk, and he tried to remember her name, Polaris. Have you heard the one about 6 hormonal teenagers? Izuku was blind. Toru was not. She was invisible. Now, there are many things she wishes were different about those facts, but the benefit of being invisible is that no one knows where you are looking or what you are seeing. People shouldn't turn their heads when caught staring, like when Kyoka would stare at Izuku much longer than she should have if she knew someone was looking. The other problem was how Izuku would look at Kyoka when she played music or sang for him. She didn't sing for the others, but she would for him. Izuku looked at her with such a dreamy look that, in truth, it made Toru a bit jealous. Then there were the music lessons, concerts, and trips to the music store. Not that Izuku didn't go to different places with their friend group, but there was something different when he went off with Kyoka. They had this shared music file to which they would each add songs and gush. It's not that Toru didn't like music, but her interests were more in idols and such. She liked some of what they shared, but not in the way they did. Then there was the choker he had bought Kyoka, black leather with metal studs and a purple jewel at the clasp that matched her eyes. Kyoka always wore it. The fact that it had metal, allowing Izuku to see her more clearly, wasn't part of Kyoka's at all, Toru thought. The pictures of Kyoka were different too. They had all the colors, and the softness reminded Toru of her portraits. Then there was the kiss they hadn't talked about. That was not to say it hadn't happened again, or that Inko hadn't caught them. Toru rubbed her face as she watched Kyoka giggle and fidget while talking with Izuku. Izuku was smiling and laughing back. Kyoka Jiro. Toru tilted her head and looked at the girl, wondering what would happen next. She liked Kyoka. Kyoka cared and was just as defensive about Izuku as any of them, maybe only second to Katsuki. Toru sat thinking about Kyoka. She was pretty, and all the girls around them were pretty, at least in Toru's opinion. Most guys didn't seem to hit on Kyoka like they did Set, but Kyoka had that stay away from me stare with anyone but Izuku. Toru nibbled on her lip. She liked Izuku, but what if Kyoka did? Then what if Izuku liked Kyoka and not her, or Kyoka liked Toru, or Izuku was secretly in love with Mei, who was in love with Mara, who in turn loved Katsuki, who was in love with Izuku, who wasn't really in love with Mei but in love with Set, which Mei was cool with because Mei was in love with Set. Still, Mara was crazy jealous about the whole thing. But Katsuki loved Kyoka, who was in love with her, and Izuku would be lonely and devastated, drop out of school, and become a delinquent. She took a deep breath as her heart was pounding, and her mind was racing. She knew that Izuku was special to Kyoka. He had inspired her to combine her two passions and pursue both. The two had their special connection, just like he and Toru did. What did Izuku want? What did Toru want? She wanted to kiss him more. She knew that, but if he kissed Kyoka, how did that make her feel? It was fine. Nothing had happened during their first year of high school, and nothing would happen in the second year. Second year, Mara and May. May leaned back in her work chair and looked into Mara's soft black eyes. Mara blinked a few times. Yes, May, Mara said. Mara, do you think I am pretty? May said. Mara squeaked like a mouse, blushed, and nodded. Is that why you came over a lot and figured out how to make blueprints? Mara was about to faint. Yes, Mara squeaked out. I think you are pretty, too, May said with a smile. Would you like to kiss? Mara blue-screened. Smoke may have erupted from her ears. When everything rebooted, May stood right before her. I am going to kiss you now, May declared. Mara nodded, closed her eyes, and pursed her lips. Then May kissed her. It was so soft and passionate. May was still trying to figure out how she ended up on her chair with Mara straddling her, kissing her into oblivion. May would have to figure that part out later, but this was too much fun. Kyoka and Izuku. Izuku was wondering how he got here, on his back with Kyoka on top of him, their laughter still ringing off the walls, her reaching for a photo he found buried on her wall of Kyoka in magical girl costume. He activated his quirk and gulped. He could see her face so clearly with the help of the choker he had bought for her and her new earrings. Her smile had slowly faded, and what was left was this look in her eyes that seemed to shine as she reached and tucked some hair behind her head. Slowly, she moved her head to the left. He mimicked the movement and watched as she slowly moistened her lips. Kyoka, he whispered. Izuku, she whispered as she leaned down. He could feel her breath on his lips, his breathing quickened, and he knew she could hear his heart pounding. Her jacks were on his chest. Kyoka, Izuku, she whispered again as her eyes closed, and their lips met. She stopped reaching for the photo as she adjusted herself, her legs straddling his chest, her hands on the sides of his head as she kissed him. Her mouth parted, and he did the same as she initiated a much deeper kiss than any he had before. It was amazing. As the vision of her faded in his mind, all he could feel was the warmth of mouth as she taught Izuku one of the greatest exports from France, ever. Kids' dinner. The call from her father broke the spell. Kyoka sat up, her hand touching her lips. Coming, she shouted, her face turning bright red as she scrambled off him and fled the room. Izuku, just lay the hell am I going to do? He screamed mentally. Katsuki Bakugo. Okay, not a problem, ignore it. He had to do was ignore it, nothing big, act like normal. His gaze scanned the room, past Kyoka making faces at Izuku, past whatever Toru was doing, and there she was, laughing and talking with some of the other girls in, a faint dusting of blush on her cheeks, a new shade of lipstick. He shook his head. Why in the hell was he noticing these things? When he watched her tuck her hair back or when at PE, she pulled it up into a ponytail. Holy cow, he didn't even want to talk about when he saw her running around for soccer. He tried to scream. There was one rule, one damn simple rule: he wasn't supposed to fall in love with her. Then there was the trip to the beach. That trip nearly made him ruin everything, and one afternoon, he was about to mess everything up. Was Izuku any help in this matter? Nope, none. His dad, well, at least his dad had asked the most important question. Was the risk worth the reward? He knew his life was different ever since that terrible day at the river, the day he robbed Izuku of his sight. He wanted to bury himself in that guilt and shame, bury himself so deep in it that no one would ever find him. But Izuku didn't even let him get entirely wrapped up, demanding he be a hero for them both. Then, the change in schools, the scorn, and being ignored, he deserved it. At least they would give him the punishment he deserved. That first day and every week after, there was Setsuna, hello, new kid, and then some crazy theory as to why he was alone. Irritating at first, the week's highlight was this small social interaction, this sense that he was still human. Then Izuku and Toru transferred in, and it was different. Set came to sit with them. She was easy to get along with and had this natural flow to her. She joked with the two idiots and would tease him about her higher grades. She had it all figured out before he even told her, and then he asked if they could be friends, but there was that one rule: he couldn't fall in love with her. Sure, no problem, never, not even a remote possibility. The thought had been ludicrous that saying yes was a no-brainer. The absolute worst was that he didn't even know how it happened. One day, he saw her, and she smiled at him like always, and his heart tried to burst from his chest. He couldn't figure it out. This had to be some mistake. This was Setsuna, and there was the rule. How could he break the one rule? Kyoko was cool and had a good attitude. Mara was quiet, Mei was nuts in the best way, Toru was a dork like Izuku, but her teasing drove him to try harder. She drove to be the best version of himself, not the best, the greatest ever, but the best version of him. The best version of him was being around these same idiots in 20 years, hanging out and having dinner. He shook his head. When did that become the goal? When did that become part of the dream of being a hero? Maybe it was because of that accident that he now understood what a real hero was supposed to be. Not a hero who beat people up, but a hero who could forgive someone who didn't deserve it and inspire people to be their best versions. Setsuna was one half of that coin. He knew he was bound to Izuku for the rest of his life and was okay with that. But he had already broken the one rule. He was in love with her. He watched as guys would come and ask her out, slip love letters into her locker, even a few girls, and it set his teeth on edge, made his chest hurt every time she went behind the gym, and the wave of relief when she came back alone and told them that she turned them down. Was the risk worth the reward? He looked at her, her smile, her hand, and then he looked down at his hand, remembering how she held it at the beach. How the warmth radiated through his entire body, and how cold it felt when it left there. Was the risk worth the reward? Yes, it was. I hope Izuku forgives me if this blows up, he thought. Setsuna Tokage. Okay, she said it as a joke, a funny one. I am so pretty and wonderful that if we become friends, you will fall in love with me. She had seen it in a movie, and it sounded so damn cool when she said it that day in the library, no big deal. But why did it keep screaming in her head? Why? Because when she was acting silly one night in the backyard, she looked over and yelled, "What is the one rule?" She was expecting a plethora of answers, not Katsuki to say not to fall in love with her. Katsuki was loud at times, too hard on himself, lost then found, but he understood that actions have consequences and just saying sorry isn't always enough. He worked daily to ensure that Izuku's forgiveness was not misplaced and that the faith Izuku put in him was worth it. He had muscles, drive, and a smile that made her heart thump against her chest. She thought he was cute when she first saw him, but he became interesting when Izuku and Toru came around, and she got to see who he was. Cute wasn't enough for Set. They had to be interesting, challenging, determined, and authentic. She didn't want someone fake or pretending, and Katsuki was all that. She still remembers telling her about the lists, people I care about and people whose opinion mattered. When she found out she was on that list, her heart beat faster when he was near. It grew and grew, and now Setsuna Tokage was in love with Katsuki Bakugo. He was her best friend, her first thought in the morning and her last thought at night. There was no way he felt that way. He knew that rule. It was his way of saying that he wasn't interested in her like that. They could be friends, as long as she had that, everything would be okay. She was in the library to meet him about a project. He was sitting in the same seat as that first time. "Hey Katsuki, what is up?" she said as she noticed this serious look on his face. He asked her to sit. His voice was hollow, not the normal fire she adored. Her chest tightened, and her smile faltered as she slid into the seat across from him. "I am sorry, Setsuna, we can't be friends anymore," Katsuki said. Her eyes widened, her jaw slacked. Everything just fell apart in a single sentence. She was about to cry. "Wait," Setsuna choked out. "Why?" "Because I broke the rule," Katsuki said, his head down. "I fell in love with you." Setsuna's fracturing world paused. "Say that again." "I broke your one rule, Setsuna. I fell in love with you," he repeated, looking at her. Setsuna Tokage loved her quirk. She loved it for so many reasons, but today, it didn't matter that there was a table between them. Her body broke apart at the waist, flew across the table, and into his arms. He started to say something, but she silenced that with a kiss. A kiss that exploded the passion and feelings between them, pun intended. He didn't hesitate, dream or not. He wrapped his arms around her and kissed her back, hands tangled in hair, lips parted, awkward French kiss, you name it. It was happening. When she finally pulled back for air, she was thankful that she had been so wrapped up in the kiss that she hadn't called her lower half to join them, or she would have been straddling him in the library while wearing a skirt with no tights today. You, Setsuna said, you scared the shit out of me. Don't you ever do that again. She was staring so intently into his eyes. I love you too. Back to kissing they went. The second time she floated back to the lower half, they broke apart. But you are wrong. We will always be friends even now that you are my boyfriend. I'm your boyfriend, he managed to stutter out. Damn right, mister, Setsuna said with a smile. So I expect you to take good care of me. It would be my honor, Katsuki said. That was how Setsuna Tokage and Katsuki Bakugo started dating. Their friends knew that night when Set told the girls, and Katsuki told Izuku, who then blurted out he had kissed Toru and made out with Kyoka. His solution is to try to ignore it. Katsuki winced. There was no way this would turn out good. It was such a great plan. That plan lasted until the weekend. It lasted long enough for Mei and Mara to announce they were dating and for Setsuna to announce she and Katsuki were together officially, and then everything descended into pure chaos. All Katsuki said was, "Hey Izuku. I kissed Kyoka and Toru, but we haven't discussed it. I am scared to talk about it. I don't know what to do." Izuku blurted out, silencing everyone. "I think they are both wonderful, and all I can think about is kissing them again. My mom said not to be a kissing bandit. I am not even sure how it happened, but it just happened. When I think about it, I feel weird and want to kiss them again. It felt good and was so soft and different, but it should be right, both are different. They are not the same. Except they want to be heroes, and for some reason, they want to kiss me. It is cool in that way. You guys know what I mean, but then again, I am so confused, and part of me is afraid of losing one, if not both. But it is not very hero-like to kiss two girls, and mom said that she didn't raise me to hot lips, Izuku. Toru is so wonderful and special. She was the first person I felt at ease with about being blind, and I needed to find the serenity to access my quirk. So it wasn't through anger that it was hard. Still, it was real ease when I thought about being drawn to Toru, creating a picture of her, or bending light. Then Kyoka. Holy cow, wow, the colors that come off her when she sings or plays an instrument are breathtaking and amazing. I can't explain that at all. And the more I was around Kyoka, the more I could tap into the spectrum that seemed real. How could I see sound? It was a great first step. They are both beautiful, but it has just been tearing me up because I don't know what to do, and I don't know who to talk to. Kyoka and Toru's parents were right out. Mitsuki just laughed and told this story about my mother that made mom come running and chase Mitsuki around the house. Masaru said, "Well, that is quite the pickle." Then he said I needed to come clean. Izuku continued without stopping as they all just stared at him and tried to process this flood of words flying out of his mouth. Then I heard about Katsuki and Set, then Mei and Mara. Mara had already told me, so that was cool, and congratulations to the four of you. I hope that your relationship grows and you guys are together forever. That would be a great story, but then Katsuki started sweating me, and I couldn't hold in any longer, so now I don't know what to do. Kyoka and Toru are beautiful and so special, and I tried to stop talking for a while, but I just couldn't. It was getting harder to breathe. So I was probably going to pass out. It wasn't very heroic beating an unconscious blind man. "Oh, there it is, night," Izuku said, passing out his head and falling back on the couch. "I want the record to show all I said was hey Izuku," Katsuki said. "I think we should go pick up the snacks now," Mara said, grabbing Mei and dragging her out of the house. Set agreed with that fantastic idea. She didn't have to drag Katsuki anywhere. He was on his feet and out the door before her. Toru and Kyoka stared at each other. "You kissed him," Kyoka said. "You made out with him," Toru responded. "It just kind of happened," Kyoka blushed. "Same," Toru said, thankful no one could see her blush. "That was one of the most interesting things I have ever seen," Kyoka said, looking at the unconscious Izuku. "Last time I saw that was when we met the wild cats that one time," Toru responded. "So we should probably talk about this. Do you want to wait for him?" Kyoka said, looking at Izuku. I would like to know where we stand before then, Toru said. I am in love with Izuku. Kyoka looked down and deeply breathed. I am in love with Izuku. Well shit, now what? Toru said, throwing her hands up. We cut him in half, so we are both happy. Kyoka said, rubbing her face. I don't know, Toru. I don't know. If he had shut up after the serenity part, I would step back. But he had to keep talking, Toru sighed. The spectrum and how you looked when you played blah blah. Leave Izuku to make a complicated situation on its own and make it even more complicated, Kyoka said with a laugh. No kidding, right, Toru chuckled. Look, Kyoka, I know the friend thing to do is step back and offer you my support, but I can't. Neither can I, Kyoka said. I want to wish you the best and try to bury my feelings, but that won't work. Not only are you all so important to me, but he is too important to ignore how he makes me feel. I feel the same way, Toru responded. I know I won't just be able to sit back and wish you luck, tell you that I will support you because I am going to wish that you fail, so I get my turn. I am not the kind of girl that can let the only person who sees me, or who saw me first and made feel seen, slip away like that. The way he told me that I could have more than one dream, that it didn't have to be one or the other, Kyoka said. How I watched him grow and become so strong that nothing will stop him from being a hero, that I must be by his side. I have to help him stand up when he trips. Hold him at night, Toru said. Let him know that no matter what, he is not alone, Kyoka added. I want to be there, Toru. The thought of not being there makes my heart hurt, Toru said, holding her chest. Then let's cut him in half, Kyoka said. I don't think there is a knife big enough in the house, Toru said. You won't give up on him, nor will I, Kyoka said. So let's share him. I think you may be crazy, Toru said, looking at Kyoka. I am crazy, Toru. I am also a greedy bitch as well. I don't have just one dream of being a hero. I want to be a rock star, Kyoka responded. I want all my dreams and don't want to settle. So we both date him, love him, be there for him, and get our dream. Just a bit different than both of us thought about when we woke up this morning. You want us to both date him? Toru in her hand through her hair. How would that even work? I have no freaking idea, Kyoka said. We both get to date him, kiss him, go on dates, we figure that shit out. People do it all the time. Sometimes it works, and for others, it doesn't. And if this crazy idea doesn't work, Toru said. Then we tried, Kyoka said. Okay, if we do nothing, then we force him to choose, which is going to hurt the hell out whomever he doesn't choose, or he chooses neither of us, and then someone else will realize how wonderful he is, and they get him. All of that sounds like a shit sandwich, Toru said. Okay, let us think about this. You are saying that we both date him so we both can try and get our happy ending. Not to be that bitch, but what if I realize that my happy ending doesn't include you? Right back at you, Kyoka responded. What if he decides that for one of us or both? She looked at Izuku. No one knows the future, Toru. All I know is that I love him, care about you, I'm closer to you than the other girls, and don't want to lose both of you. I don't want to lose you either, Kyoka, Toru said softly. I don't want to lose Izuku. Well, let's try. We will have to work hard, but I can. So can I, Kyoka said. When Izuku finally woke up, he sent out his quirk and found Toru and Kyoka standing before him. You get to be quiet now, Toru said. Izuku closed his mouth tight. Kyoka said, looking at Toru. Thank you, Toru said. You're welcome, Kyoka said. We have decided that you are a fortunate man, Izuku Midoriya. Do you know why? No, ma'am, Izuku responded quickly before shutting his mouth. We have decided that you are going to date us both, Toru said. He was about to say something but quickly shut up again. You are going to date us both. We get to kiss and love you. Because we both love you, Izuku, Kyoka said. We love you so much that we are willing to share you. We both love you so much that we are going to try this wild thing and hope it works, Toru said, her voice a bit more gentle. But that means you must work twice as hard to make us feel special. And loved, Kyoka said. Can you do that, Izuku Midoriya? Can you love the two of us? Can you work hard enough to make us both feel special? Toru added. I am afraid to fail, Izuku said. I am terrified of letting one of you down if not both of you. Izuku took a deep breath. I am not worthy of this, but I promise I will work as hard as possible to make this work. Then take good care of us, Kyoka and Toru said in unison, making them laugh. Toru pushed Kyoka lightly. Kiss him, Toru said. What? They exclaimed. If I can't stand seeing you kiss him, then there is no way this will work, Toru said. Kyoka and Izuku blushed, but then she pulled him in and kissed Izuku, making his knees wobble. I think I can live with that. Toru pulled Izuku to her as she kissed him. Kyoka felt something stir in the back of her mind, but she didn't know what it was. That is strange to see, with you being invisible, Kyoka said. But I am okay with that. Now listen, hot lips, Toru said, making him blush. You kiss someone else besides the two of us. Then not only will you be blind, but you are going to be deaf, Kyoka said, her jacks floating up. No, my hot lips days are over, Izuku said, smiling. Not quite, Kyoka smirked, kissing him again before Toru did the same. I hope our third year isn't this exciting, Toru said as they sat on the couch. No kidding, we must keep prepping for the entrance exam, Kyoka said. Did you agree to meet with that woman? I did, Izuku said. I don't know how many chances I would get to train with someone else with a magnetism quirk besides the payment I could live with. What did he want? Toru said suspiciously. He wanted to know what my favorite book is. Izuku said. He has been here for over a year so far, figured it was a good token gesture. The mistress of magnetism. Izuku was blind, but Toru and the group weren't, as they stared at the woman. Was this Izuku's sister or some distant relation? The woman had electric green hair and eyes, and she was 5'7", with a fantastic figure. She was poured into a pair of black jeans and boots. When she removed her leather jacket, the tight compression shirt hugged her body and showcased her abs. Holy shit, Setsuna muttered. No shit, added May. Mara just nodded. Greetings all. I am Lorna Dane, the pro-hero Polaris, she said with a bit of an accent. Hisashi Midoriya asked me to come here to help his son with his quirk training. I was told that you all wanted to be heroes as well. I don't know your quirks, but I am willing to offer you all some advice. I have been doing this for 15 years and run a training center outside Florence with my husband, Alex. Lorna looked around the Maze family junkyard. I have to say I like how you all found a place to train that can suit your different abilities. Let me get started with them before you and I, Izuku, take a deep dive into your quirk. She pointed to Katsuki, you first. She walked over to where the stuff that May's father had set aside for demolition was. After she had him explain his quirk, she watched as he started to demonstrate. Okay, you have a great ability. I think you would benefit from learning how to narrow your blast to penetrate more armored targets, and the ideas you have for mobility are amazing. Now I notice that you released the explosion. Let's try focusing on the blast first with the shape of your hand when you trigger your quirk. Then I want you mentally try it as well. Let us see what works. After she got Katsuki training, she went to Setsuna. You are doing the right thing, Lorna said with a smile. Focus on breaking your body apart more and controlling them in sync. You can use your body to swarm an enemy like a tornado. The faster you can move, the greater impact your blows will have. After I get the rest going, we will work on having you adapt to changes in the course and help improve your dodging. Do you two normally train together? She said to Kyoka and Toru, and the girls nodded. After Lorna heard about their quirks, she smiled. I wish half my students were as bright as all of you. Let's not change this up, but there are some things we should work on. Kyoka, you should work on fighting with your jacks. I see that you can move them independently. Also, keep lifting weights with them. There are muscles in the cords. The stronger you get them, the better you can use them in a fight. Lorna turned to Toru. Nothing too different from what you are doing, but we should add more clutter to the ground and set up something that you have to sneak by Kyoka to steal and exit without being discovered. She finally walked over to Izuku. I think we should focus on your shield and movement today. Can you tell me how you can see despite your injury? Izuku explained what had happened with Dr. Dayspring and how the theory was that the cortex had altered itself to work with his quirk. Lorna sat next to him and began to walk him through how she created her shields to give him a basis to work off of. She was pulling up pure magnetic force, something Izuku hadn't done before. But he was using it to touch or grab things with his quirk, and he just hadn't realized it. Armed with that knowledge and feeling her use, it was so clear to him that he was suddenly giddy to begin practice. Lorna was a great help to all of them, but she was a godsend to Izuku. She told him that his fine control was astonishing, even better than hers, and he was impressed with his abilities for one so young. She worked with him constantly to tap into the other skills out of reach. She was only in town for 2 weeks, but the knowledge she could pass down was invaluable. Once she learned about Mara's ability, she sat with the girl. She dictated a cornucopia of knowledge and techniques for Izuku to study and practice long after she left for home. She pushed the others, doing her best to impart ideas and wisdom, offering advice to work out physically, and talking to the girls about how to work out and not lose their feminine charms. But it was the final day that Izuku would cherish the most. It was just him and Lorna all day, with one goal in mind: the electromagnetic spectrum. When it was over, Izuku saw his first television broadcast in nearly a decade, but best of all, Toru was seen by her friends and family. No picture, but honestly and true, Izuku could only manage it for a few minutes, but thanks to Lorna, he knew he could do it and knew how. Lorna pulled him aside when her car arrived to take her to the airport. "Listen, Izuku, keep training, keep pushing. I will be honest with you. You can surpass me and be better than I ever dreamed when you grab the magnetic force. It is stronger than I could ever hope for. Your limit will be what you place on yourself." She tapped his chest. "If you fail, don't let that stop you from working at it till you succeed. Please read the notes I left for you, and don't ever stop growing. You have a wonderful team around you, hold them close, and you will carry each other far." "Thank you, Lorna," Izuku said, surprising the woman with a hug. "I don't know how to thank you or repay you for what you have done in just these 2 weeks. You were close on most of it." She hugged him back. "You just needed a little nudge." She patted his back. "I left my number. Text me if you have a question, and I will do what I can to help." "Thank you again," he whispered as they broke apart. "Just one thing," she said, calling back to him. "Don't reverse the planetary poles, okay?" Izuku laughed but stopped suddenly. "Wait, Lorna, can I actually do that?" Her laughter rang back at him. "Polaris, wait, is that something I can do?" Toru lay on her stomach as the most sensual beats escaped past her lips. "Oh Izuku, oh damn, this feels so good. Don't stop, please don't stop. Right there, right there. A little harder. Oh shit, her voice filled the room. Kyoka sat on the floor, her thighs rubbing together. She nibbled on her bottom lip. "Izuku, I want my turn," she beeped. "Oh, I haven't forgotten about you, my dear Kyo. When I am done with Toru, I will be able to focus on you," Izuku responded. "Now, just a bit deeper." "Oh god, Izuku, I don't know it can handle," Toru said. A whimpering protest escaped her lips. "Just try to relax, baby," Izuku whispered. "There it is, you're such a good girl." Toru beeped loudly. "Oh god," Toru called out as she fell limp on the bed. "Your turn, Kyoka," Izuku called out as Kyoka came onto the bed and lay next to Toru. "You are not ready," Toru whispered. Kyoka felt her tank top lift and her bottom slip down to just above the curve of her ass. The warmed oil hands of her boyfriend touched her back, and she felt the immediate pressure. The Izuku began to massage her back, and this pulse emanated from her hands, making her tremble. "Izuku, oh shit, it is too much, oh god," she beeped out. "We are just getting started, Kyo, and you are at my mercy," Izuku teased as Kyoka's beeps filled the room. Mitsuki looked at Inko, her eyes wide. "Are you going to check on that?" "He is just giving them a massage," Inko said, handing her the hamburgers to take outside. "The girls hurt their backs in training. He is just loosening them up so they can enjoy the barbecue." "That doesn't sound like any massage I have ever had," Mitsuki said. She smirked and was about to say something, only to see Inko staring at her with a knife in hand. I will take these out to Masa. Good idea, Inko said. The door opened, and Set and Katsuki walked back from the store. We are home, Momodoriya, Set called out. Ice in the ice chest. Katsuki asked as sensual beeps came from Izuku's room. The couple looked at Inko wide-eyed. Massage, Inko said. Oh, that makes sense, Katsuki and Set said, smiling as they walked outside carrying the bags of ice. Kyoka was lost in the massage. One of the many tips that Izuku had picked up from Polaris's manual was how using a LOW-level magnetic pulse during a massage helps to loosen muscles and is also great practice in control and target depth. A technique he was more than happy to employ on his girlfriends. Straddling their backs while rubbing oil and hearing their beeps did things to them, and the feeling of his hands on them did things to them. It was an incredible tease, amongst other things the throuple was discovering. Like now, Kyoka found she rather enjoyed hearing Toru's beeps during the massage, and when they went swimming, the way the water would outline Toru's features as it fell away. Toru enjoyed watching Kyoka and Izuku kiss, especially when they would get into it and forget for a moment that she was there. She would blush, again thankful she was invisible so no one could see it, but right now, while Kyoka was being massaged, they were lying next to each other, and their eyes were locked on each other. Strange feelings fluttered in their stomachs. Despite the blossoming of relationships and teenage hormones, which most would have thought would be a distraction, it became a huge motivator for the group. With the awkward tension gone, they could throw themselves even deeper into their training. Each of them was pushing into combat training. There was only so much they could do as they didn't want to hurt each other, and none were professional fighters. Izuku considered reaching out to Hisashi. Lorna had been such a godsend to the group. Lorna would respond to their emails and offer suggestions even though she was half a world away. Still, there wasn't much she could do for their physical combat training beyond making suggestions, as she wasn't there to correct forms. Strangely, Katsuki and Setsuna made out rather intensely after combat training. Then Lorna made them an offer. If they came to Italy for the summer, they could stay with her and receive training. Of course, there was some hesitancy on the parents' part, sending their children away for the summer to Italy with someone they didn't know. Of the young couples being out of their view, Kyoka's dad was huge on this. On the other hand, it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the kids to prepare better for a future in heroics. In the end, they agreed. That was why the BBQ was happening. It was a celebration before the kids left. Mara and May were not making the trip with them. They were going on their summer training programs. May had been accepted to an internship program with Shield Industries on Island, and Mara would be interning at a law firm in Tokyo. It was a last hurrah before they all departed for the summer. Italian summer. Lorna's base was located in Tuscany, at a beautiful Italian villa. The kids were in awe as they rode out of Florence to the countryside and saw natural beauty around them. Izuku was smiling as Kyoka and Toru were doing their best to paint a picture of their surrounding sand relay the beauty of it all. It was one of the moments in life when he felt the pain of his disability. If it wasn't for the breakthrough that had been facilitated from Lorna's teachings, it could have been something much worse. While he couldn't see the landscape by himself, his girlfriends were painting such a vibrant picture, coupled with the joy in their voices, those feelings faded quickly. When they arrived, Lorna and her husband, Alex, greeted them. Alex was 6 feet tall, had blonde hair and blue eyes, and was in impressive physical shape. He had a warm, rich tone to his voice as he greeted the kids his wife had gushed about. Warmly shaking each of their hands before leading the group into the house, Izuku was thankful for all the ornate metal touches around the house. It would allow him to navigate through the massive home. After being shown where the kitchen and dining room were located, they were told when meals would be served before they were led to their rooms. It was in a separate wing of the house connected by a covered walkway, which housed the weight room and sparring center. Everyone had their room on the second floor. I remember what it was like to be young and in love, Alex told the group. Be respectful of your neighbors, and remember that actions have consequences. One unplanned night of passion could end someone's future in heroics. The group blushed. There is no curfew. We are not going to tell you when to go to bed or anything. You are here to train. I expect you to do so. You miss multiple training sessions, I will send you home, and you miss a meal time, it beeps to be you. You are all disciplined young adults, and I believe you will do well. Rest today. Tomorrow, we will take a trip into town so you can do some sightseeing and pick up snacks. There is a small kitchen at the end of the hall. We stocked some drinks and snacks for you. I expect this place to look the same as when you got here when you leave. Yes, sir, the group responded. I am sure you are tired from the trip, so make yourselves comfortable. Dinner is in 1 hour in the dining room. Alex smiled and left them to settle. Each room was lovely, with a simple suite, bed, dresser, desk, television, and a small step-out balcony. Izuku navigated everything well and set about putting his things away before he began measuring his steps to different things on the floor, such as the kitchen and stairs. The others soon joined Izuku as he discovered where things were in the kitchen. There was a small table, but there were windows, and there was a large balcony with a magnificent view of the countryside. The home was large and wonderful, with a pool and hot tub. A small lake was nestled amongst the rolling hills. The group commented on a large building that looked out of place. Izuku reached towards it and found that the building was made of metal. The group wondered if it was some training facility. Dinner was magnificent, very different from what they were used to. They were surprised when they were served a small glass of wine with their meal. A caprese salad, a hearty soup with sausage, bacon, cream, vegetables, kale with white beans, decadent braised beef ribs with sautéed carrots, and roasted potatoes. A simple but lovely chocolate cake was served as dessert. Lorna and Alex smiled at the compliments as the kids took test tastes of the dishes as they were presented. Like good kids, they insisted on handling the dishes to thank their hosts for the lovely meal. They talked about the meal and laughed about the glass of wine, what they liked, and how the meal changed with a sip of wine. I felt very fancy, Toru said with a laugh. Feeling full, they all went to bed, setting their alarms to get up at a decent time so they would be ready for the trip to town. The small town had an open-air market. It was like stepping back into history. There were some modern stores but very few. Of course, the group drew some attention, but everyone in the town was very polite, and they wished them good morning. They saw some kids their age roaming the village, but the entire trip into town was lovely. The next day, they realized what they had signed up for. After a hearty breakfast, they were led through their workouts by Alex and Lorana. Then, they were led into the sparring room. A tall, older, thin man stood in the center of the room. His white, wispy hair was disheveled, tanned skin, and his eyes were closed as he held on to a long wooden staff, a mischievous smile on his lips. I leave them in your care, Stick, Alex said. Remember, this is day 1, and Medic will not be here till next week. I understand, Stick responded. Welcome, children. My name, as you now know, is Stick. Like your friend, I am blind. I will be your combat instructor. Like your friend, my quirk helps me see things. Now, my children attack me so I can see what I am working with. Of course, no quirks, as Alex has informed you. Medic is not here till next week to fix you up. In less than 5 minutes, they were all on the ground groaning in pain. Not any formal training, maybe some resting with each other or a schoolyard scrap or two. No bad habits I have to undo. Now, on your feet, you can lay down when you are dead. They worked Monday through Friday, worked out daily, and Stick trained them Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Alex and Lorna handled their quirk training in the strange building they had seen the first day, Tuesday and Thursday. They were leaving their weekends free. They met other members of Lorna's team. Medic was a short, pretty girl with light brown hair and eyes. Her specialization was medicine, but she also taught them how to handle a knife, avoid areas, and target places. Her quirk sadly gave Stick more rein to push his training harder. And when she was there, the kids knew that day would be extended. Marvel, a tall, very handsome, charming man with black hair and eyes, was telekinetic. He helped Izuku with his training fine control and set with her maneuverability. Even Katsuki focused his blasts. With his quirk, Marvel had such fine control that he could make cuts like a scalpel. Gigante, a giant of man, engaged the children in brawling combat style. He was incredibly durable, tanking explosions from Katsuki as he would force the children to seek alternatives to take him down. Icarus, with his beauty and white wings, was able to help Set, Izuku, and Katsuki with their flight and maneuverability. Devil, his quirk gave him a matching appearance to his name. With dark purple skin, a tail, large 3-digit hands and feet, and glowing red eyes, he was a stealth expert. He took Toru and Kyoka under his wing. The girls adored him. He had such a gentle and caring nature. His method of combat was quick and efficient, but he was also not above fighting dirty, which he taught the girls the finer arts of. The summer passed quickly, with fun and great memories. Night swims, summer picnics, moonlight strolls, deep kisses, and a few nights spent asleep in each other's arms. Izuku sat on the dark balcony when it was over, and everyone was fast asleep. He pulled out his phone. Hisashi was surprised to see Izuku's name on the caller ID. He knew he and his friends were doing well with Lorna. "Hello Izuku. Is everything okay?" "Hello," Izuku said. "Thank you for introducing me to Lorna." "You're welcome," Hisashi responded. "I went to the movies for the first time before we left Japan. Thanks to her, I can tap further into the electromagnetic field. There is this show I started watching called The Dark Kingdom. I enjoy it quite a bit," Izuku said. "I will have to check it out. Those Dune books were outstanding," Hisashi said. "I am not normally into sci-fi, but the author was very talented. You could notice the difference when his son took over, but he did well. Sometimes it is hard to do better than the original." "Thank you for the birthday card. I was surprised to receive it," Izuku responded. "You're welcome," Hisashi said. "I hope you can make use of the gift cards." "I will. My girlfriends and I are looking forward to using the one for Emperor's Steakhouse," Izuku said. "I just wanted to say thank you. I will talk to you later." "I look forward to it. Is the entrance exam coming up soon?" Hisashi asked. "Yes. I wish you and your friends good luck," Hisashi said as the call ended. "The entrance exam. This has to be some sort of mistake," Aizawa said as he sat staring at an application. "What is bothering you, partner?" Snipe asked as he looked up from a different application. The faculty staff reviewed different applications that were flagged for further review for entrance into the UA. They had already handled the general studies applications and were now reviewing the hero course applications. "What is bothering you, Shota?" Present Mike said, setting an application aside. The process required reviewing each application, investigating what had been flagged, and deciding if the applicant could still proceed. Most of the time, simple errors and nothing much is needed in the way of significant intervention by the investigations team. "I figured you would be happy about the hero point system. It is a step in the right direction but still not enough," Aizawa said. "I am talking about this application here." Aizawa opened the door, hit the keys on his terminal, and popped a picture of Izuku Midoriya. "You already approved this ectoplasm." "Yes, I did, as did Nezu," Ectoplasm said. "Is there some problem, or something I overlooked?" "The kid is blind," Aizawa replied. "Once, I could guess from the picture," Midnight said as Hei hit some keys on her keyboard. "Blinded by an accident involving another applicant, number 5623 Katsuki Bakugo at 6. Both applicants are close, with Katsuki citing Izuku as one of the reasons he wants to pursue heroics in his essay. Dr. Charles Xavier, a noted psychologist, provided a very well-regarded psychological report on Izuku. The kid is talented, Quirk Magnetism, has excellent grades, is enrolled in an outstanding school, and scores consistently near the top of his class. What seems to be the problem? He is blind, Aizawa said again. I understand the accommodations for the written exam, but what should we do about the practical? Have a blind kid stumbling around out there. Is he going to be a liability to other test takers? That would be completely unfair and illogical unless we give him a special practical exam. Are you suggesting we exclude him from the practical exam just because he is blind? Ectoplasm said, his voice very measured. Yes, Aizawa said. Look, if his quirk was radar, or something that would allow him to navigate a freaking battlefield safely, then that would be different. How will this kid handle combat training, quirk training, internships, and patrols? Do I need to go on? We teach him. Midnight said, her eyebrow raised. If he passes the exams, then he deserves a shot. It may require trying different methods, but you never know, the kid may surprise everyone. I welcome him to general studies if he can't pass the exam. If somehow he passes the exam but can't perform the duties required of a hero, then we have to address that. We can't deny him based on a disability, Ectoplasm warned. I will file a sanction here and now if that is what you suggest. Fine, Izawa said. The kid is just going to get himself hurt, this is beyond logical. He had better not get special treatment, or I would file sanctions. Shota, present Mike said. Give the little listener a chance. You can't keep expelling these kids before they have a chance. You destroy their dreams on day one, regardless of whether you sign them back up for general studies. You are not doing them any favors. That is where you are wrong, Hizashi. I am saving their lives, Izawa said. He shook his head and set Izuku's file aside. Inko drove Izuku to UA. He had to arrive earlier than the others due to his written exam taking longer and the accommodations required due to his blindness. Izuku had tried to insist that he didn't need the unique accommodations, but the lady on the phone did not hear any of his protests. He was greeted at the curb by an adorable-sounding girl named Carrie. She had a lovely voice, offering her arm to guide him to the testing area. The girl handled him with a practiced ease. When Izuku asked, she told him her father was blind. She wished him luck once he had seated as his examiner arrived ready to begin the test. Izuku took a deep breath. Katsuki, Setsuna, Toru, Kyoka, and Mara would be here in about an hour to take their exams. Mei was already here taking the support course exam. Izuku set out his test-taking items and sat there waiting. Welcome, Mr. Midoriya. I am Professor Kwanan, and I will administer your written exam today. Parts of the exam will be written, and others will be oral. Once we begin, you are not allowed to leave the room. Are you ready to begin? Yes, ma'am, Izuku responded. Toru and Kyoka found Izuku, Katsuki, and Setsuna sitting on a bench outside the auditorium. As they approached, Katsuki stood up so the girls could sit beside him. They talked about the exam, checking on him while Katsuki went to the locker to retrieve their lunches. The girls led him to a table, where they waited. After lunch, they entered the auditorium. They all noticed the looks that Izuku was getting as he tapped along with his cane. Kyoka glared at a boy with purple orbs for hair and his two friends, a boy with yellow hair with black horizontal streaks that looked like a lightning bolt, and the other with black hair and strange prominent elbows. Everything all right, Katsuki said, noticing Kyoka's glare and following it to the same group. Just some assholes running their mouth, Kyoka said. They sat through the explanation of the practical exam. They got a laugh out of someone interrupting present Mike. They noticed that they were all going to be in different exam areas. Probably don't want people who know each other to work together, Katsuki said. Makes sense, Toru said. Imagine if they dropped all Ofus in the same spot. After orientation, they all went to get changed, Katsuki leading Izuku. Izuku was able to change and sat waiting. Izuku, Katsuki said, sitting next to him. What's up? Izuku said, his voice betraying his nerves. I know we are years past that day, Katsuki said. But you have to pass this test. I can do this without you, but I don't want to. Neither do those two knuckleheads that you call your girlfriends. It won't be right unless we do it together, you understand? Yeah, I do, Izuku responded. Hey, Katsuki. Yeah, Katsuki responded. That day was the worst and best day ever, Izuku said. I don't know where we both would be without that day. I want you to know that no matter what happens, you're my brother. And you are mine, Katsuki said. And no damn brother of mine is not going to pass this stupid exam. It is robots, and you have a goddamn magnetism quirk. I would say they catered this shit to you if I didn't know any better. No kidding, right, Izuku said as they got to their feet. Besides, imagine Set running around UA unsupervised. They are not ready for that, Katsuki said, laughing. Katsuki blushed when Setsuna demanded a good luck kiss before she boarded her bus, even more so when she criticized how weak that kiss made her question his dedication to her. Katsuki wrapped his arms around her and dipped her over in a passionate kiss that made Set smile as she boarded her bus. Izuku smiled after getting kisses from Toru and Kyoka. They insisted on walking him to his bus before they went to theirs. Izuku took his seat at the front of the bus. The voices on the bus had quieted down when he entered, and they noticed he was blind. He was seated next to a lovely girl who introduced herself as Pony Tsunotori. She had a strange accent, and her Japanese was a bit broken, but she explained she was from America. To the girl's delight, Izuku smiled and was happy to talk with her in English. Since Izuku had much time before he could tap into the electromagnetic spectrum, he had learned a few languages with a language app. Besides, there were a bunch of American artists that Kyoka liked. Pony was very friendly and offered to help him off the bus. He smiled and took her assistance. She was nervous about him taking the exam. He promised her he would be safe. Reluctantly, Pony stepped away to prepare for the practical exam. "Mr. Midoriya," he heard a mature man's voice call out to him. Izuku quickly triggered his quirk and was surprised when the image came back in stark clarity due to a metal capture scarf. A slender and tall, pale-skinned man with messy, shoulder-length black hair that partially hangs in front of his face and half-opened black eyes. He is usually recognized for his worn-out appearance. His facial hair is stubbly and unkempt, and his eyes appear tired and flat. "Yes," Izuku said, turning to the man. "I am Mr. Aizawa, one of the proctors assigned to this sector," Aizawa began. "I want you to understand that you being allowed to participate in the practical exam was not a unanimous decision." "Okay," Izuku said, a bit unsure of how to respond. "To limit the school's liability, we are assigning you a third year as a personal proctor. They are here to ensure that when you trip and fall, they will help you back to your feet. Should or when you find yourself in trouble, they are authorized to keep you from being seriously hurt and will escort you from the exam to the medical team." "Wait," Izuku said, "I came here to take the exam just like everyone else. I tried telling the woman on the phone that I didn't need special accommodations. Now you are telling me that you are assigning me a special proctor to pick me up when I fall, and when I encounter the robots, they are to rescue me and take me to the medical, removing me from the exam." "Glad you understand," Aizawa said. "Okay, quick question," Izuku said. He was doing his best to control his anger. "What is the all-time score?" 150 points scored by All Might, Aizawa said. "One more thing," Aizawa paused. "What would happen if one examinee managed to eliminate most of the robots or all of them? What would happen to the other examinees? In that highly impossible scenario, then that student would advance, and since all the others would fail not only for scoring high enough but for failing in such a spectacular manner that a single student had eliminated all the robots," Aizawa said. "Cool," Izuku responded. "Can I meet my special proctor now?" "Mr. Midoriya, Ms. Hado," Aizawa said. "It is very noble of you to attempt the exam. Best of luck." Izuku muttered under his breath. "Wow, that all seemed very rude and kind of tense," a charming woman's voice said. "Hi, I am Najire Hado." Izuku activated his quirk to see who he was talking to. She was a fair-skinned girl of above-average height and a shapely figure. She had wide and curious eyes with long and thick upper eyelashes. Her hair was periwinkle in color, reaching down to her knees, twisting around itself at her waist, and curving inwards around her legs. She had side-swept bangs tucked behind her ears on the right and hanging just over her eyes on the left, with two short clumps of hair on either side of her face, curved towards her face on the right and behind it, under her ear, on the left. "It is a pleasure to meet you. I am sure that you are going to do great. I don't want to get in your way. But I am concerned that you are blind. I don't want to be offensive, but I want you to be safe. But you must know what you are getting into, so I will stay back unless I jump in. Or if you call for help. Either way, I want you Toto good, so how can I help?" Najire said. "Well, it is very nice to meet you, Najire, thank you for that," Izuku said. "But you don't have to do anything." Izuku walked into the staging area and took a deep breath. Between rage and peace. Between rage and peace lies serenity. All things are possible in serenity. Toru, Kyoka, Katsuki, Mei, Setsuna and Mara. And F*** that guy. "Damn," Najire muttered. "I won't ruin things for Pony. She seemed nice. I don't know about the other people taking the test. But if that idiot just thinks that I am a liability, that I am here to mess around and need to be rescued, Izuku took a deep breath. Grant me the serenity to accept the challenges the world had laid before me, the strength to acknowledge, and the wisdom to learn to overcome them. Let me not accept my limitations, trust in those who stand with me, and fear not those who stand in the way. Where did you hear that? Nejire asked. My therapist taught it to me, Izuku said. You said that you didn't need special accommodations, Nejire asked. You were blind, correct? How would you be able to take the written test without special accommodations? Or why are you so sure you won't fall during the practical exam? Can you detect the robots? I will tell you about it after the test is about to start, Izuku said. I don't want to be rude. No, I understand, Nejire said. I will step back, please be safe. I will, Izuku smiled. Izuku heard the sound of the doors opening. He was at the back and waited. He sensed the other examinees racing off. He tagged Pony so he could keep tabs on her as she raced off. When an exam race begins, most runners will group and move toward the center, cluster, and fight over the initial points. With your abilities, you hardly need to be anywhere near the fighting. UA is known for its robots. This test is gift-wrapped for you, Izuku. Make a statement and show all you have learned. Lorna's words echoed in Izuku's head. Izuku sent his quirk out. During his training in Italy, Lorna was drilling him in to get a larger picture of the area and allow him to get as much information as possible at the beginning of the fight. Lorna would plant metal stakes in the surrounding countryside so he could get a map and locate different objects or members of her team. Even when his friends were training, he would have to identify things and help them or try to take something from them. Izuku had to admit that group combat, the worst part of training initially, had become his favorite by the end. Fighting with his friends, that sense of a dream coming true. Italy has been this magical glimpse into the future that they all have been dreaming of. After the team battles, they would all stay up late going over the battle and trying to find tactics they could employ in the next fight. Lorna and Alex had years of experience and were willing to share and pour it all into the kids. They even extended an invitation to come back and join the team after they graduated from UA. Nejire watched this strange boy extend his hands out to the side. She saw him rise and float out of the starting area. He spun twice in the air as he rose above the testing field. Nejire moved into position to catch him if he was to fall, but she didn't go chasing after him. Instead, she smiled at the boy and the look of peace and happiness he had on his face. There were a bunch of robots stationed around the city center and in the buildings. There were more around the rim, just spaced out. Izuku's quirk surged ash grabbed all the robots outside and in the buildings along the rim. They all came ripping out, and up to Izuku. Nejire's mouth fell open, seeing all the robots. Izuku paused to make sure that whoever was scoring for him saw them come to him before he closed his hand, and they all crumbled and were destroyed in one single motion. Izuku Midoriya shattered the previous record in under a minute with 193 villain points. Izuku deposited the pile of robots to the side and floated back down, landing before Nejire. Shall we continue our talk? Izuku said as he started moving towards the city center. How in the world did you do that? Nejire said. That was so cool. You just crushed all those robots in one shot. It has barely been a minute. And you have been looking right at me every time we talk. Are you really blind? As a bat, Izuku said as they started walking. When I had my accident, the damage to my eyes traveled to my optic nerve, but there was a doctor who was able to stimulate it to regenerate. When my quirk came in, it allowed me to create a map using electromagnetic pulses. Is your quirk magnetism? Izuku nodded. So, if there is metal around, you can bounce your quirk off it to create a mental map, Nejire said, a hint of joy in her voice. A battle in a city, with robot opponents, there is metal everywhere. You just crushed the exam. Thank you, Izuku said. Nejire watched as they came into view of the city center, and the robots began to freeze and not move. Their guns were yanked to the side violently, and little missiles seemed to go haywire and miss their targets or crash into each other. Nejire watched as the examinees took advantage of the good fortune. Rubble that broke loose during the battle was caught and thrown aside. Nejire saw him sweating, but nothing looked to be straining him. She marveled at his quirk, control, power, and stamina. The zero-pointer was unleashed, and the other examinees began to run. More rubble was yanked away. Pony stepped back, watching as the zero-pointers came into view towering over the buildings. Its head was wrenched to the side and torn off its massive body. The entire testing site rang with the sound of a massive lightning strike that tore from another testing area. What was strange was that it came from the ground up. Pony marveled at what kind of quirk could have done that before she scanned the area to look for Izuku. She had been trying to keep an eye out for Izuku, hoping he was doing well. She spotted him sitting on a bench next to a girl with periwinkle hair, garbed in a UA uniform, looking entirely at peace. She noticed his hand was extended towards the zero-pointer. Making sure it was shut down, Pony jogged over. "How was your performance on the test?" Pony said. "It went good, Pony." Izuku replied, standing, looking where the lightning had erupted before walking towards the entrance. "There was chaos at the start," Pony said, walking with them back to the entrance. "But then things went well. Robots seemed to falter. I feel good about my score." Once they reached the entrance, Najire bid them goodbye, asking Pony to ensure Izuku reached the bus. Observation room. All Might. Toshinori Yagi, aka All Might, had a secret, truth to be told, and he handed numerous secrets. The secret of All Might's quirk was one of constant speculation amongst the public and his fellow pro-heroes, not to mention innumerable villains. It was something that All Might had become an expert at ducking or avoiding. That was the biggest secret of all. Toshinori Yagi had been born quirkless, but that didn't stop him. In the time that All Might grew up, the world was very different. Heroes did not sit at the same elevated status that they do today. Villains had taken over city blocks or sometimes whole towns. Even though he was quirkless, he wouldn't sit back and not do anything. This determination brought him to the attention of his mentor, Nana Shimura, the pro-heroine Sky Lord. Nana had a secret of her own that she shared with a young Toshi. Her secret had a name, a story, and a destiny. The name, One for All. The story is about brothers, evil, and a quest for justice. The destiny, to end the most dangerous villain in the history of Japan and potentially the world, all for one. The secret of One for All was that it was a transferable quirk that could be passed on not through bloodline but through choice. A stockpiling quirk that was continuously gaining strength to fulfill its destiny one day. The quirk was born when All for One forced this stockpiling quirk upon his brother, believing him to be quirkless as well. It was then that it merged with the brother's quirk hidden quirk transfer. Thus, One for All was born, and a long hunt by All for One was undertaken to reclaim what he felt was his. Nana saw something in a young Toshi. He often wondered what it was. She took him under her wing and gave him the One for All, a gift allowing him to change the world. The story ended for Nana precisely like the previous 6 bearers before her. Nana had been murdered, and her closest ally had taken him away to America to train and get strong enough to end the reign of All for One. And strong enough Toshi did become. It had happened a few years ago. In the end, the threat of All for One, the destiny of One for All, and Toshi was able to fulfill his promise. There had been a cost, and Toshi paid that cost. A lung, stomach, liver, kidney, and the majority of his intestines. The biggest price was that his time as the symbol of peace was coming to an end. The need to find a successor had come into glaring view. Toshi had weighed the thought of letting it fade away with him, but there were so many other problems still in the world. The world still needed a symbol. Out of all that had been sacrificed and lost to end All for One, it was time for a new destiny and tomorrow. Toshi had started the search, and then it happened. He came across a young man defending a small ramen cart from a bunch of thugs. Toshi watched to see how things would play out. He didn't even know what had led him to this area or this spot that night. The slim young man has short, gold hair parted to the right. A black, lightning-shaped streak on the left side of his fringe partially obscures his left eye. He has slanted, somewhat triangular, golden eyes and notably small eyebrows. Denki Kaminari was the boy's name, and he did his very best, using his speed advantage and his quirk of electricity in small bursts to fend off the attackers. Toshi watched as Denki took his lumps in that fight, but Toshi saw the boy struggling to his feet repeatedly, not giving up. Till Toshi stepped in and sent the rabble running. Denki was thankful for the intervention. The man who ran the ramen cart was a hard-working man with a family to support and a young daughter needing medical care. The hoodlums had been causing problems until Denki stepped in. They sat and enjoyed a fine bowl of ramen as thanks, though Toshi couldn't eat much due to his injuries. But the ramen was just a pretext to get to know the boy. Denki had a good heart, was brave and determined, and was a bit obsessed with girls but was young. The more Toshi got to know Denki, the more he felt that with some training, this boy could be the one. Train they did, with Toshi doing his best to get to know the young man, and he liked what he saw. When Toshi finally revealed the truth, Denki was stunned and asked if he was the right person for the job. Denki didn't say yes right away. He had to sit back and think about it and what it meant to take on the responsibility of One for All and be the successor to All Might. It took a week before he answered, and Toshi was proud. When Denki said yes, Toshi could see the resolve and change in the young man. It was a tight schedule, but they could transfer only a few weeks before the exam. Then things went off the rails. Toshi had taken to One for All like a fish to water. Denki landed in the hospital when he first activated it. Onda had passed out. The shift to Denki's quirk had changed. Denki was still throwing an electrical charge, but the first one he had fired had been closer to a massive lightning strike, which overloaded his brain and nervous system. Clenching his butt cheeks and yelling smash was not the way to go. Thankfully, Denki was used to the fact that his quirk would overload him if he used too much, so using it at smaller scales was an easy adjustment. Control of the attack had been a problem before One for All, but by the day of the exam, Denki was hitting his targets 70% of the time. The lightning he would fire forth would zig and zag, making it difficult in small quarters, but they would hit or be near the target. It was puzzling that Denki was stronger than before, but he wasn't exhibiting the super strength that All Might had. It was during the exam that it changed again. Denki had been doing well during the exam, and All Might was very proud of his protege. When the 0-pointer had arrived, a girl with brown hair and eyes had become trapped, and while the other examinees had fled, Denki had rushed in. It wasn't that Denki ran to help. It was that Denki moved so fast that the cameras couldn't track him. Only streaks of lightning were left in his wake. All Might watched as Denki strained to move the rubble to allow the girl to escape. The 0-pointer came around the corner, ready to crush them. Denki looked at the girl, looked at the 0-pointer. Thor's hammer. Denki roared. One for All surged around him as multiple lightning bolts flew from his hands, combined in midair and blasted up and through the 0-pointer's chest, destroying it. The upper part of the massive robot wobbled back, and then it fell forward, snapping in half, ready to crush Denki and the girl. The girl grabbed Denki and leapt away, narrowly avoiding the carnage. They tumbled to the ground. The girl scrambled away and puked her guts out. Denki just lay there with a goofy look on his face, drool running from his mouth. "Way," was all he said before he passed out, blood pouring from his nose and ears. Not the best last impression for his protege to leave, but the lightning bolt was damn impressive. Aizawa. When Aizawa returned to the observation room, he noticed a glare from ectoplasm, but he did not mind. He looked at the cameras and saw Izuku Midoriya, surprisingly not in the medical tent but walking with Najire through the city center. "Hey, Hizashi, did he give up or something?" Aizawa asked his friend as he sat down. "No, Shota, he set the record in under a minute," Hizashi replied. "What?" Aizawa said, stunned. "We still have to calculate it, but he scored more than enough to pass in under a minute," Hizashi replied. "Also, what you did wasn't very nice, Shoto." No one agreed to the special proctor for the little listener. "We had agreed to let him take the exam like everyone else." "He is a liability," Aizawa replied. "I was ensuring he would be safe and not cause problems for the other examinees." "Still, Shota, Nezu heard your little talk with him, and he was unhappy," Hizashi said. "We all heard it. That little listener didn't need any help. You are right. He is causing problems for other examinees but not those in his area." Shota Aizawa looked at the screen and saw the shots going rogue, the robots being held in place all over Izuku's testing area. Scores in that area were rocketing up, and it was more of a problem for them to find robots than to take them out. Then Shota saw the zero-pointer head get torn and cleaned off by what was assumed to be Izuku and how the boy had reacted. Then, another zero-pointer was blown to bits by lightning. When the signal for the test rang out, Shoto rewound the tape of Izuku to watch what he had missed. "What in the hell?" Shoto muttered. "Mr. Aizawa," Nezu called out. "We need to talk about that little stunt you pulled with that examinee." Izuku was walking towards the locker room when Katsuki caught up with him. "Did you dominate?" Katsuki said as Izuku took his shoulder. "I think so. Some professor stopped me outside the entrance exam." After Katsuki had listened to the story, he angrily ground his teeth. "Man f*** that guy. My thoughts exactly," Izuku said, slipping his feet into his shoes. "Enough about my test. How did you do?" "Good, darn good, not 190 points good, but I think it may have come close to All Might's record," Katsuki said. "All that training with Alex over the summer was a game changer." "Let's get the heck out of here," Izuku said. "I am sure the girls are waiting, and my head is pounding from all that work today." "Let's do that. I am freaking starving," Katsuki said, leading Izuku out. They didn't have to wait long before the girls joined them, and they made their way home. The only thing left to do was to wait for the results. "Aizawa, you are removing me as the head of 1A," Aizawa said, stunned, "for making sure that a blind examinee didn't get hurt." "Yes," Nezu replied crisply. "It had been decided that the boy would take the practical exam just like all the other students, and you decided to go against that decision. Not only did you go against that decision, you insulted and humiliated that boy with your choice of wording. Yes, the boy is blind. He didn't need to be reminded of his disability, nor did he need to imply he is a liability. That young man just expended the results by not only making a staggering amount of villain points in under a minute, it is going to take a full day just to decide on how many hero points to assign him for the rest of the time he didn't destroy any robots and just helped his fellow examinees," Nezu continued. "You have expelled your students at an alarming rate, though you may have re-enrolled many into general studies. After that, it is still not an excuse for this activity, which I have allowed to continue long enough. I am positive that you will fight to have Mr. Midoriya in your class only to expel him for being a liability," Nezu said. "The boy is blind, Nezu," Aizawa fired back. "His quirk is not radar sense. How do you expect him to manage combat training, internships, or patrol when he can't see the attacks coming?" "How did he see well enough to walk around without his cane?" Nezu replied. "To see the attacks from the robots. We don't know all he can do with that very powerful quirk, which he easily demonstrated today. You are not fired. You can stay on for crime scene investigation, stealth, and close quarters combat training. If you find that option unappealing, I will accept your resignation." "You're serious," Aizawa said. "Deadly," Nezu replied. "Your bias would have denied us the opportunity to see what that young man is capable of, and I am questioning what else that bias has denied us in the world for heroics." Nezu paused. "I feel you can still benefit the hero course in these roles but not as the head of a hero course. I expect your answer by tomorrow morning. You are dismissed." To be continued. I hope you enjoyed this story. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.